about it because like I realize I've been pestering you, and of course you know me, like, because you didn't do the interview.
Yeah.
There was some process in my mind that eventually became, all right, if he's not going to fucking answer my emails, I understand what he's doing to me.
Yeah.
So I've got to sit down and say, wait, he's more busy than anybody I know.
Yeah.
He doesn't have time to deal with me.
Well, there's a couple of things going on when I don't answer your emails.
Yeah.
I don't answer a lot of emails if I don't have something constructive to say. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
I just don't.
Yeah.
Because I am busy. I got the kids and work and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
and
yeah,
also
yeah.
my mind is just clouded. So there's a lot of emails I just ignore.
Right.
Because I don't have a really good answer for.
Right.
I'm ambivalent or
I can't.
I just
You don't want to get into a dialogue of maybe.
Yeah, and I just don't. I can't make myself answer emails. I also have a weird thing that I've noticed recently that if somebody emails me, I don't want to answer them right away because I don't want to start talking to them.
That's what I mean. Yeah, you don't want to get into a dialogue. Yeah.
Yeah, so you know that if you answer right away, they know you just got it and they know you're live.
Yeah.
So they start talking to you.
Yeah.
So I go, okay, I'll wait. I'll answer this guy in like a couple hours, and then I forget. That happens more often than not. But also, we had our friendship faded away at some point, and I had time when I was writing you emails to connect with you personally.
Yeah.
And you ignored me.
Really?
Yeah, for a long time. For, I don't know, over a year.
Really?
Longer than that, yeah. You just wouldn't answer me, and I would write emails that said, I'm not sure why you're not writing me back, but I'm going to persist because our friendship goes back far enough.
Right,
I
remember that.
Saving.
Yeah.
You just wouldn't answer me.
What the fuck was my problem?
At some point, I caught you on the phone, and you said that you felt like when we talk, it's just about me, and I don't really listen to you, that I'm very self-centered.
Right.
And I took that to heart, but I also thought, well, I felt like it was unfair. And so when I tried, and after that, I tried still to pursue you. You didn't want to talk to me. So, in this round, when you were trying to get me to be on your podcast or you're trying to connect with me, part of me was going, fuck him. I don't, if he doesn't want to be my friend, I'm not going to.
But we had the conversation. We made up.
Yeah, but it didn't make us start connecting.
It
didn't.
Was he planned to start connecting? But then you got very busy. So. You got very busy.
Yeah, I would say that. And look, this is yours to edit. You put in what you want here, so I'm just.
I just
don't care.
No, but I what happens to me is that my friendship with you, like for some reason over the years, despite however much distance or whether or not we see each other, whatever our lives has happened, I feel very close to you as a friend.
Yeah, no, that's the way I've always felt.
And I get choked up about it. And, I remember, even, after – we don't talk that much, but for some reason we connect, as friends pretty deeply. And then, when you were having trouble and your marriage was coming apart, there was this point where, when I finally sort of said, well, what's going on? I had this idea of your life in my head. It was a lesson to be learned. I know Louie from then. And, I know her. I was at their wedding, whatever. Yeah. So I had this whole idea of how your life had transpired and what was going on in your life. And I hadn't really been in touch with you at all. And then when he told me what was really going on, I was like, holy shit, how did I miss your entire life?
Yeah, sure.
And then I started to realize, because this happens a lot on the podcast, that we all know each other in a very sort of intimate, deep way because of what we do. And because we are of the common ilk. A comic is a comic. And there is a weird emotional understanding that we all have. Mm-hmm. But we don't know each other's fucking life. And then I got very saddened by the fact that I'd been out of your life and there was no way for us to keep in touch. And then, I don't know, some resentment happened. Who the fuck knows?
Yeah.
But I think that sometimes when we're, when you just, when you don't see someone a lot, you just sort of hold them to who they were when you did know them really well. That guy must be the same guy.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I mean, we started out together, so.
We did in a weird way, because I was thinking the first time I ever saw you, period, I was in Boston, probably 1986.
Yeah.
I was living in Los Angeles and doing all those drugs, and I was sitting at Played Against Sam's with Kevin Knox.
Wow.
Upstairs.
Yeah.
And you were darting around. You just had all your hair, and it was red, and you were skinny.
I was about 18, 19 years old.
Right. And I said to Kevin, who's that guy? And he goes, that's some kid. He's some kiddie hanging around.
Yeah, he didn't know I was a comic even.
Yeah, you're just some kid.
I wasn't really. But, no, the first time I saw you was at Catch. And
In Boston.
In Boston, yeah.
But like you didn't know me, I didn't know you then. But I remember
I didn't know you, and I didn't like you on stage the first time I saw you.
Yeah,
you were very aggressive.
Yeah,
and you were also you were in a lot of turmoil. I think you were just coming out of all this sort of Sam Kinison coke business.
Yeah.
So you were very. You exuded a huge amount of insecurity and craziness. And
undisciplined though. Yeah. Like I didn't think I was.
You made me uncomfortable. And then I met you, and then David Cross, I think, said, I'm going to hang out with this guy. You want to come with me? And he told me it was you, and I was like, oh, that guy. So then we went to the Coffee Connection.
Where I worked.
Where you were working, which is now Starbucks. Like
yeah.
Else. And you were washing dishes. It was like a movie, like a bad movie. Like it was a pile of fucking cups and saucers, and you were washing them with a big, hang over the sink spigot.
Yeah.
And you had an apron on, and you were miserable. Like you were really working hard, and it was a very humbling moment in your life. And you were like, "Oh, you guys, I got a break in a few minutes, so you want to hang out?" And I immediately liked you because of that that humbling moment made me like you a lot. And it was interesting to watch you go from being this kind of L.A. long hair, Kinison pack, coked up guy.
Yeah.
You broke that. I watched you break that down. And I watched you start talking about who you were instead of doing your bits as that guy.
Yeah.
I started watching you humiliate yourself more on stage, which is a good thing. I mean, in a good way.
Yeah.
You had a huge humility wave that started coming in. And I think that's always been your progress has been like taking away more and more layers, taking away more of your defenses away from yourself.
Not without a fight.
No, but the fight is fun to watch.
Yeah, I think when I met you, the first time I knew who you were. Here's what I remember, because when I'm sitting there trying to think about how am I going to talk to you without getting emotional and also cover the great things you're doing now. Without getting emotional or resentful or crazy. Yeah. The first time I had any idea of really who you were, I went to pick up Grant Taylor at the house you were living in with him.
He was my roommate, yeah.
And I went to pick him up to go to a one-nighter.
Mm-hmm.
I walked into the house, and he's getting ready to go, and there's a room. And the door is open, and there's just a light. There's a mattress on the floor, and there's just food and clothing and piles
disgusting.
Everywhere.
I lived in a disgusting
Well,
way.
I didn't. That's all I saw. Then I go,
yeah.
Who lives in there? He goes, oh, that's Louis, and that was who you were in my head. That's Louis, and you sort of remained that guy for a while, no matter how nice the apartment was.
Yes.
That was the amazing. There are certain things I remember very definitely.
Yeah.
Like I remember the apartment. It all revolves around the apartments. I remember the apartment over the Village Gate in the atrium.
Oh, God, yeah.
Right? And, like, going over to that apartment at some point, I think you had torn a hole in the wall. Yeah. There were things written. You had a set list written on the wall.
I used a wall of my apartment as a phone book. Like, I wrote all my phone numbers and stuff and dates.
But in big, like, indelible
Sharpie.
ink.
Yes.
And then again, there were the clothes all over.
No, and also I remember there was one detail of that apartment on Bleecker Street was that I dropped a bottle of hot sauce one day, like a bottle of Tabasco, and it shattered on the floor.
Yeah.
And it stayed there for the entire time I lived there.
But
I never cleaned it. I never cleaned up the glass.
Yeah.
It was just an area of my apartment I didn't go near after a while.
But this sort of, there's something weird about that whole thing that defined you. Even when you got the nicer apartment in Chelsea.
Yeah, on 22nd Street.
Right, there was a couple of, like, I think defining moments outside of, like, and you had that Murphy bed in Bleecker Street.
Yeah.
That thing that flipped down.
It's disgusting.
The whole thing was fucking disgusting.
Yeah, it was really gross.
I just remember that you were this guy that came from where you did. You didn't go to college. You're from Newton, and you started out really young, and you were, like, building your brain.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that, you had this weird, like I remember, like everything. You don't know that I was with you in a couple of severely life-changing moments. I was with you when we went to fucking Blockbuster, and you got that copy of Putney Swope.
Yeah.
It was in a bargain bin.
That's really funny that you tell me that because I remember it. Yeah, because I just bought a VCR for the first time.
Right, and we were just going to rent a movie.
I can't rent movies because I didn't have a credit card at the time.
So you bought them.
I bought, and it was the only thing that was for sale that wasn't like a Barney video or something.
And I remember you didn't know what it was.
No idea.
I didn't know what the fuck it was, and it changed your entire perception of movie making.
Yeah, it did. Putney Swope by Robert Downey. It just made me think you can do anything you want, even if it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
What I didn't understand was that just because Putney Swope existed in a shrink-wrap box, it doesn't mean that you can go do that.
Right.
I mean, I just thought any movie that got made and that has a package is like a lamp in the distance.
Yeah,
I can do that too.
Yeah.
But, it's not okay. But I'm really glad that was my first big inspiration.
Isn't that weird, though?
Yeah, you were there. It's funny because I was telling somebody this story recently about getting Putney Swope.
Yeah.
And
you didn't remember
forgot
me.
You were there.
There's another thing I think you told that you forgot I was there. That was another amazing day. Is when we found that computer on the street.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you remember that was me too?
I told that story on stage in Nashville recently.
Really?
Yeah.
How did that end?
First time I ever.
Well, there were two things I learned about you that day. We found this fucking computer on the street. It was right by the Chelsea
threw it in
place.
the garbage. Yeah.
It was an old shitty computer.
Yeah.
And we took it into your apartment, and then like all of a sudden you became this computer wizard.
I opened it up and I fixed it.
How the fuck did you know that stuff?
Because I took AV repair in junior high school. I took a class that seemed so dry and boring.
But you knew how to do DOS and shit, right?
Yeah, I knew how to do. My mother was a computer programmer. She is a computer programmer.
Yeah.
My mother's a software engineer, and she's had computers in our house before anyone had computers in their house.
Yeah.
We had that kind of modem where you put the phone into this big rubber cradle thing. And she had computers that had punch cards. I mean, that's how far she goes back. So I've always known computers, but I've also always known how to repair electronics because the class I took in junior high school.
And we hooked it up and we started getting information.
Started learning about this guy's life.
Right, and it was weird, right? He was sexually confused.
He was a gay guy who had come from somewhere in the South, like one of these places where you can't live as a gay person.
Yeah.
Been ostracized from his family because he was gay, but also when he hit New York, he started doing drugs and became a credit addict. He started buying things at Saks with his parents' credit cards.
Right.
And then he went home and he stole his parents' retirement bonds.
And he was writing this in a diary? How do we know all this?
Well, the thing is, this is the amazing thing about looking at somebody's computer, and I have some grief about it because it wasn't nice to do that to this person, but... at least I didn't tell anybody in his life.
Yeah.
I just carry his information in my head. But
we called him.
We saw his... Did we call him?
Yeah, just to see if he
was
a real guy.
That.
Yeah, no, we didn't say anything. But
we just called him, we heard his voice?
Yeah.
I don't remember that. Well, no, the thing was that we found his lies because we saw what he wrote to different people. There wasn't email then.
That's right.
There wasn't email then.
Right, it was letters.
That's how crazy... We read letters that he wrote to different people and a play he had written.
Yeah.
That we saw what his lies were.
Yeah.
But he went to a bunch of the story we pieced together because he wrote his family's lawyer, who was the only connection he had to his parents because they wouldn't speak to him.
Right.
He took all of his parents' money and spent it on crap and drugs.
Yeah.
And his father had to come out of retirement. His father had to stop being retired and go back to a shit job because he destroyed his parents' elderly lives.
I don't see. You sat with the info. I didn't know all of this.
He wrote to the family lawyer saying, "Please get my dad to speak to me because it was hard enough on him that I'm gay, but also now I destroyed his life. But he really, he's kind of an asshole too, or whatever." And then he'd write somebody else mean things about his parents that didn't represent.
How did you represent this as a story? What was the arc? Where did this go?
I started talking on stage in Nashville. Well, because right now I'm trying to come up with a new material, so I'll talk about anything on stage. I think it died in the middle of the story.
Yeah.
But it was fascinating to people. When you tell people something like that, I found a computer that was broken and I turned it on and started learning about the person.
Yeah.
People start really fucking listening. And that guy did have an interesting life from what I knew of it, but
yeah. I just remember that event, and I remember that.
Well, the part of it that turned into a really interesting hook on stage was the idea that he was complaining about his father's homophobia to his friends.
Yeah.
And saying, my parents hate me because I'm homophobic, but I know the truth. I think only I know the truth about this guy.
Yeah.
That his parents hated him because he destroyed their lives because of his fucking credit problems and because of his drug addiction. But he called it, they're just homophobic from the South.
Right.
And it was an interesting insight to me, and it made me wonder about other people who, you ever watch The Sopranos?
Yeah, yeah.
There was some storyline where Meadow had a black boyfriend.
Yeah.
And her father was racist against him. He didn't like her having a mixed being in a mixed couple. And then the boyfriend turned out to just be a prick.
Right.
And he left her.
Yeah.
Because he's an asshole.
Right.
And her mother said, whatever happened to him, and you see her wheels spin, and then she goes, Daddy chased him off. And it's bullshit. She lost him. Well, she lost him partly because he's an asshole, but also because she was superficially didn't like her.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she wasn't going to let go of her right to say my daddy's a racist piece of shit, even though it didn't have anything. And I wonder how much that happens in like people that complain about racism or homophobia in their lives or any discrimination.
A lack of taking responsibility for their own real feelings.
That they have something that they've done that they use it to cover stuff in their lives.
Well, I talk about being in Scotland, where I say, fuck the Scottish.
Yeah, no, that's what
and only because they didn't like me.
Exactly.
So, and that enables me to generalize about an entire culture of people. Like those Scots didn't like me, but I'm aware that it was that personal.
Exactly.
And that I don't know anything about Scottish history.
Every time I go to England, it's a challenge. I love working there, and I often have some great shows there, but sometimes I don't. It's, to me, the hardest place for me to work. And I know it's all about me. I go there with all kind of preconceived shit.
Yeah.
Whenever I come home from being in England, every show I do, I say, fuck the fucking dirty British, and I just say terrible things about them, because I know, first of all, the people here will just get excited. I don't care what crowd. We're still America, and they're still England.
Fuck anything is good here.
Oh, yeah.
As long as we don't acknowledge that we're in trouble.
No.
Yeah. And I think the other, defining thing, and not so much that I was a defining thing, I'm just trying to remember when I was sitting there, like, I was surprised about how much I know about your career without actually researching it. Just because I knew you. There were times where I'd go to your house and you had all big wads of money, because you came down here in probably, 1988?
88, 89, yeah.
And you and Nick DiPaolo, who you've known
together.
for years, and people see him on the show, you lived together in that fucked up apartment.
Yes.
That Barry Katz owned.
Barry Katz's apartment. Barry Katz, who's, he created Last Comic Standing, right?
He's Dane Cook's manager. He's Whitney Cummings' manager.
Yes.
I think he's still Jay Moore's manager.
Anthony Clark, all those people.
Yeah, I mean, he used to run a comedy operation out of a basement in Allston, Massachusetts, and there was a period in time where he just said, I'm going to sign everybody.
Yeah,
and
I was his first client.
I
was his first client. And I was also the first person to fire him.
Yeah.
But anyway, Barry had an apartment on 82nd Street in Central Park West, a little tiny studio.
Right.
With like one of those, like a stove that looks like it's a dollhouse, like it's a joke.
Yeah.
And it had a loft. So
yeah.
I had a bed up on this rickety loft and a bed underneath it.
Yeah.
And he charged comedians from Boston $150 each per month to have a right to use this apartment.
How many were there?
There was like 15 guys. And it was a terrible combination of guys. Anthony Clark was one of them.
Yeah.
Ed Regine, the guy from Providence.
No. The guy who was put in jail for turning back odometers.
Yes. And Wally Collins was one of them. Anyway, Nick and I went down there a lot.
Yeah.
And then Barry he was giving up, the lease came up.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to do it anymore. I don't think he was making enough profit. He was trying to make a profit.
Sure.
And he wasn't making enough, so he was giving it up.
Yeah.
And Nick and I contacted the landlord when we got the place.
Right. And then, like, and you and Nick were working at Catch a Rising Star, and I was wandering through the streets with Todd Berry wondering why we couldn't work at Catch a Rising Star. Yeah. And I just remember you taking out of your pocket wads of cash after an evening at work.
Yeah.
And I was just sort of like, fuck. But he's doing that to hate me.
Well, yeah, so that was a cash business then, and you'd get $50 a show, and there was that one really heightened time in the late 80s.
Yeah, where it just money.
You could do 10 sets a night.
That's right.
And they were $50 each, and I had a motorcycle then.
Oh, yeah, the fucking motorcycle.
I had a Honda Super Sport 750.
And that was that time where you used to run up and down the FDR, and you wrecked it.
I used to go on the FDR doing, like, literally 100 miles an hour so I could get to shows quicker. And I'd do, like, 2 shows at the Boston Comedy Club.
Yeah.
1 at the Cellar, 1 at the Village Gate, or 2 at the Village Gate, and then I'd run screaming uptown to do the Catch and the comic strip. And
didn't you wreck that fucker?
A show. Yes.
You laid it down. It freaked you out. You somehow walked away from it.
Yeah, it was a weird turning point in my life because that was, I remember one day, it's just funny because you mentioned the pockets full of cash.
Yeah.
I remember one night I'd done like 10 shows.
Yeah.
And I was 23 years old, something like that. 20, not even, like 22 years old.
Yeah.
And I parked my bike at my garage in the Village.
Yeah.
And I had, my pockets were bulging with cash that I had made. And, I mean, you know, $50 a show, 10 shows. So what's that? That's $500?
Yeah.
$500 for a night's work.
Right.
23 years old. And then I'm walking to my Bleecker Street Village apartment.
Yeah, I remember you had the parking space across the way. It was a walk.
Yeah.
And you also had cars there, too. Didn't you? You bought these weird muscle cars.
But so when I remember there's one specific night that I was walking home with a ton of cash from my motorcycle to my Village apartment, and I thought, I have the greatest life in the world.
Yeah.
I don't even care if I don't become famous or anything. This is the balls.
Yeah.
I have the world by the fucking balls. I had that thought that night.
Yeah.
And then the next night, I was going down 2nd Avenue doing about 70 miles an hour, and a car went through a red light going perpendicular. And I never even touched my brakes. I just plowed right into this car.
And he flew over it.
I flew over the car. I lost my sight, but I was still cognizant, I remember. Yeah. And the bike was in pieces. I came my sight came back, and the bike was in pieces in front of me. I heard a woman scream. It was a nightmare. And I got strapped to a board and taken to a hospital. And after lots of CAT scans and tests and shit, this doctor came in to me in the hallway of, you don't have a room.
Yeah.
And he said, "You're fine. You're stupid. Don't ride motorcycles anymore, but you're fine." And he said, "Take it easy for a while." And so I hopped off of this table, and I thought, I'm just going to go home. But, you know, the threshold to which you need to be hospitalized is still pretty, you still pretty badly. I really fucked myself up. And I could barely walk. I mean, I was in really bad, but I hadn't broken anything. So
everything was sore.
My whole body had bruises all over the side of it that grew as the weeks went by. For 2 weeks, I was in bed,
on your hip and shit.
Yeah, on my leg, and I was a fucking wreck. And my motorcycle was gone.
Yeah,
and I slept that night, and I just felt really terrible. I think I'd peed myself. It was just really bad, humiliating experience. And then I looked in the mirror the next day, and I was balding. I saw it for the first time.
Yeah.
That I was losing my hair.
Right.
And, within that week, Catch, Rising Star closed. That was the first. Catch and the Improv went down, 1-2.
Mm-hmm.
They both closed. And things started getting really bad. Things immediately started getting bad. And then the 90s came, and all the clubs started closing.
Yeah.
And I couldn't make a living anymore, and I couldn't pay my rent. That night was a huge, instant turning point. Everything from that night on in my life went badly.
Yeah.
For 3-4 years.
I've always believed that, despite what you think, I think of you, that, out of anybody I know, and I've always said this, that if anybody, has the capacity to create, some genius in this fucking game, you're the guy.
Thanks.
Because your work ethic is unique, and you very consciously let things get so fucking bad for yourself in order to see if you can rise from it. That's always been this weird ethic you had. That even when you were I remember one time in that fucking Chelsea apartment that you were surrounded by garbage. I mean, real garbage. There was garbage bags that were not being taken out, and I said, "Why don't you take this out?" And you just said, "I just can't do it."
I couldn't do it.
And there was dishes, there was stink in there.
Yep.
And then it was right around the same period where you shit yourself on purpose.
I don't think I ever really did that.
Oh, you don't?
I used to do a joke about that, but I don't think I ever really did that.
Okay.
I used to think about it just shitting my pants and then cleaning it up and chalking it up to experience. Yeah.
Right. But there was all this...
I don't think I ever did that.
Okay, all right.
I don't think so. I might have. I don't know.
But when was the transition? Now, I guess at that time when all the crap started hitting the fan, you got your first writing job, writing for Jon Stewart when he hosted the Carolines. Was that it? Was that the first writing job?
Colin Quinn hosted Caroline's Comedy Hour. Jon Stewart was the head writer.
And you were the writing for that?
Me and David Tell and Susie Essman were the writing staff.
And that started your writing career?
Yeah, that was the first writing job I had,
And then you went from there to Conan after a period of time?
Yep.
Because I think that's important, especially because a lot of comedians listen to this and a lot of people that are interested in comedy listen to it, that the thing that makes you that thing that evolved you into the great, auteur that you are now and personal comedian was that you were one of these guys, in my world, after a certain point, me being jealous of you It serves no purpose, because and people don't realize this when they listen to this, is that your automatic feeling is like, I'm a comedian, that guy's a comedian, why the fuck does he get that?
Right.
That people don't realize it, and then at a certain point you're like, well, because I can't do what that guy does, or I'm not doing what that guy does.
He's playing a different instrument. That's all. Yeah.
But because we're all comics, you think like, who gave them that?
Right.
And the thing is that you could write and produce television and do stand up, and you were making short films at the time, all at the same time.
Yes.
But what's happened now, and we can talk about it because it's interesting, because your evolution from what was basically an absurdist point of view, that when you started and all the way up to probably, not that long ago, your jokes were really, about ridiculous,
silly
poetry.
Yeah.
They were crass, and some of them were deep, but they were still not invested in your life.
Absolutely true. Yeah.
And at some point that turned, because I think your anger got to a level where you thought you were denying yourself.
Yeah.
By not engaging in your life.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, so you were one of the original crew on the first Conan. You defined the original Conan O'Brien show with Dino and with Robert.
Yeah, Robert Smigel was the head writer, and that was what stopped the slide for me, because after that motorcycle accident, I just kept losing money and opportunities. And I remember I called you. It's funny when you're talking about things that you were there for, because you had moved to San Francisco.
Right.
You had this forward thinking of like, I want to actually live like a human being, and I don't want to live in this place where if I can't get two shows in a week, I'm literally starving to death.
Yeah.
So you moved to San Francisco and we're living like a person. And I had visited you out there, and I loved the life you had. And then I went back to New York, and I was doing Tony Camacho gigs.
But wait. Can I just put something in real quick?
Yeah.
You went to San Francisco, I think, and this is who Louis is. I think you bought a car off a comic. Didn't you? You bought a Trans Am.
I went to L.A. and I bought, because I was going to do L.A. and then I was going to do San Francisco. I bought a 68 Mustang.
But this was just a road trip, and you bought a car.
I bought a car. But you know what? I don't regret that, because...
No, it's not a matter of regret. It's just who you are.
I couldn't rent cars because I couldn't get credit for years.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't pull my life together.
So you bought a car with it?
I bought a car. It cost me $1,100. It was a black 68 Mustang.
But didn't you lose your credit because you bought a car with your Amex?
Yes, that's why I lost my credit, because I bought a BMW with an American Express card. And I had to give the car back, and everybody that was involved with it, the car dealer and Amex, were like, we're going to let you out of this, but you're never going to get a credit card again.
Right.
It took me... Well, I finally got a credit card by getting one of those credit cards that you just pay money for.
I remember that.
And it rehabilitated me. It took me years to get a credit card.
And the other thing you did was you were locked out of your apartment once, so you got a room at the Ritz? Or something like that?
I used my when I got an Amex card, I just became an idiot. Yeah, I couldn't get into my apartment, so I got a room at the Ritz-Carlton in Central Park. Yeah. And I stayed there for like 3 nights. And Amex isn't a credit card, It's you got to pay every month.
Yeah, I know.
So I just couldn't. Yeah. There was 1 month that I just went. I bought a BMW. I stayed at the Ritz, and then
that was it.
Yeah, and I was also on an installment plan with Amex for years to pay that back. I have an Amex card now. I don't know how they don't remember, but
you bought the Mustang for $1,100.
$1,100, and then I drove it from L.A. to San Francisco. I was with a girl who wasn't fucking me, but she wanted to go camping with me, and she and I drove around and camped. We bought 2 pup tents, and we drove around in a Mustang and went camping in like the Great Grand Canyon in fucking Utah, and it was a tremendous trip.
But you guys were at each other's throats, right?
We hated each other. When we got to Yosemite, and she was being so awful to me, that I said, I'm taking you. She had somebody she was staying with in San Francisco,
right?
And we were supposed to be there like in 5 days. I said, you're going to your friend's house today. And we got in the car and we drove through Yosemite all the way to San Francisco without speaking to each other. Oh. And we saw like fucking bears, fighting, and we couldn't talk to each other about it. But she's now. I actually got emails from her last year, and I was really happy to hear from. She was a cool person now.
Yeah,
she is,
kids.
Yeah. We all have kids now, except for you. But
okay.
So sorry. Anyway, this is your when I called you.
Yeah. At Conan.
Yeah, I wasn't doing well, and I was doing gigs in, like the Nanuet Holiday Inn,
sure,
stuff like that.
Was it what was that? The Taunton Regency.
Taunton Regency. Well, I'd have to go up to Boston sometimes and did
those.
That's
what we did.
But there was the New York equivalent, which
right.
is like the Connecticut fucking
right.
whatever.
One-nighters.
And places like Ronkonkoma Comedy Club in Long Island. I mean, just terrible. When everyone was shitting on comedy, it wasn't.
And you had to drive up to 4 or 5 hours to make $200,
$250. And I was working a lot for a guy named Tony Camacho, who one night I worked Rascals Comedy Club in New Jersey, middling for some guy for $100 a show.
Yeah.
And at the end of the week, he paid me like $150 light of what he owed me.
Yeah.
And I said, you owe me more. And he just laughed at me and said, yeah, what are you going to do about it? Come on. You need the work. What are you going to do? And I was like, wow, you're just going to take my money. But he was right. I worked for him several times after that.
These guys are the gatekeepers.
No, they're amazing. But so that's where I was at.
Right.
And then SNL had a huge turnover. Saturday Night Live threw out a huge amount of their cast. It was one of their biggest.
That's when was that when I went in? Was it 95, 94?
Oh, no. This is 93.
Right.
Or summer of 93.
Right.
And everybody I knew got hired. Every single person. David Tell was a writer.
Yeah.
Jay Moore was a writer-performer. Sarah Silverman, writer-performer. Lark Keitlinger.
Yeah.
Janine Garofalo.
Yeah.
I mean, my entire generation of comics got hired in SNL. Everybody.
Yeah.
And I was at the same audition. I auditioned the same night. And I remember I was on first. They put me on fucking first. And Jon Stewart was hosting.
Right.
And Louis Ferranda, who ran the club then, the SNL people hadn't shown up. So
right.
he said, I just want to start. Let's get going. And he told me to go on without them being there.
Yeah.
And I said, but they're not going to see me. And he said, we got to get going. I don't care. And I mean, I was crushed that I was just not going to get seen.
The gatekeepers, again.
Yeah. So Jon Stewart was my friend, and he said, I'll do as long as I can.
Yeah.
And he did like 20 minutes to open, but then he kind of shrugged at me and said, I got to bring you up. And I went on, and the instant I went on, the SNL people came in. And not only did they come in at a bad time, they also fucked up my set because they were huge.
Seating,
big, it was like
seating
12 people.
Yeah.
But saving grace was that David Spade was in the group, and he knew me. I didn't know him personally, but he liked my act, so he told him, sit down and watch this guy. And I saw him do it. And I had a great set. And then everybody else followed. And the next day, everybody found out who was hired. Everybody was hired, and I wasn't. And then I thought, this is it. I mean, I don't know if I can keep doing this.
And that's when you called me?
I called you in the middle of the night to ask you about San Francisco.
Yeah.
And whether I should move there. And I was questioning the whole career.
Yeah. And did I say anything helpful?
We talked till dawn.
Yeah.
And I think I unloaded on you that I didn't think I had any shot at anything anymore, and that I was really remorseful. But it's like coming out of prison. How do you back out of a comedy career?
Yeah.
I was 25 years old, and I had been doing stand-up since I was 18.
Yeah.
So I had no way.
No skills.
Nothing to offer. Any other.
Except you could resurrect a dead computer.
Yeah, I could fix a computer or a car. Or I could cover a football game for a cable station, you know? And so we talked about it. You told me about your life there, and I just thought, I'm not going to make it there either. And I hung up the phone intensely depressed.
Yeah.
And then my phone rang like 2 hours later. Like I got 2 hours sleep, and it was this guy. Hi, my name is Robert Smigel. I don't know if you've heard about the Letterman show going away, and Conan is this guy. And I didn't know any idea who Conan was. And he said, Jim Downey saw you at Catch. Jim Downey was running SNL then. And he said that you were funny, so I wanted to know if you had any writing samples.
Did you?
I had it. Well, I had short films I had made.
You had the ones
that
with
I just
Shapiro
made on my own dime.
And Ice Cream.
Yeah, all that kind of
That's
stuff.
That's available still on DVD, right?
No, but you can see it on YouTube. I just put it all on YouTube.
Oh, you don't sell that DVD of the short films?
No, because I had to just make that in my house. That DVD.
I have one of those. Maybe I could. I should hold on to it.
Sell it, yeah. But
or maybe I think my ex-wife actually took that. She's a big fan.
Oh, okay, good. Well, she could sell it then. Which ex-wife?
Oh, Misha.
Okay. But anyway, yeah, he hired me. Within a week, I was hired at Conan. They saved my fucking life.
And I think it's important for people who are listening to realize that, between you, Robert Smigel, Dino Stamatopoulos, and Conan, you guys redefined, what late night sketch comedy looked like in the context of that type of show.
Yeah, it was a pretty different show, yeah.
Well, you were pushing the envelope because your comedy, being as absurd as it was, and his sensibility and Dino's sensibility, brought this type of, almost childlike inventiveness to sketch comedy again, which was completely unique.
I think that's true, yeah.
And that it set the tone for that show for the next 12 years.
Yep.
And you remain friends with Smigel and Dino, I guess.
Yeah,
to some degree. But, I mean, it's just interesting that you were at these junctures where the one thing I also remember is that coming off of that, and this is still when your stand-up is primarily, absurd, but inspired, but, noise-based and a lot of, right? I mean, I'm not being condescending.
No, not at all. Of course not.
But the greatest moment of this type of style backfiring, which I thought was an important moment, was when Dana Carvey got the variety show.
Yeah.
And Smigel was the head writer, and he brought you guys in.
Yep.
And you wrote that sketch, that opening piece.
The nipples thing, yeah.
That really was like a thing where, like, it sort of resonates all the way through to Conan, not functioning the way the network wanted to in the Tonight Show slot.
Right.
Was that, here Dana Carvey had a primetime show, and he brought in you guys who were a late night operation.
Yep.
And you guys struggled over that sketch. And what was it again?
It was just this weird idea that I had on the way to work one morning that Bill Clinton had surgery so that he had nipples going down so that he could breastfeed. The first idea was just that he could breastfeed.
Right.
And then I thought then he would have nipples going down his belly and like a puppy, like a dog.
Yeah.
And
you got to work around Carvey, who was an impressionist.
Yeah.
That's who
I think
you were
that's why I
for.
said Bill Clinton.
Right, right, of course.
But I also did like the idea of Bill Clinton breastfeeding a baby.
Right.
Like on national TV to show that he was nurturing.
Right. So it was a good-hearted idea, but it was the opening sketch for the first show, was it not?
Yeah, and it shouldn't have been. I mean, I argued against it being the opening sketch because I thought it's going to kill us. But the network really wanted Dana to do an in-one. It was like this thing where they wanted a thing where Dana, in a character, talks to a camera. And it's the only option we gave them that had that.
The only option you gave him was that Bill Clinton opens his shirt. He has puppy nipples. He has dog nipples.
Yeah, and there's milk spurting out of them onto live puppies and squirting them in the face, and kittens on his desk.
And what was the blowback from that?
Really scared the shit out of people. It really bummed people out. Because we were on right after Tim Allen's show. We were on it. We were not a late night show. We were on at fucking 8:30.
Yeah.
Or 8 o'clock. I think we were on like it was something crazy. Like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a lot from that whole experience. It was a terrible, terrible experience. I hated it. I hated being.
What did you learn?
I just learned that you can't force people to like something if it's not what they want. I mean, it's not. Why were we trying to make these people? We would get these letters that were heartbreaking. That really hurt my feelings. Like people that are really like just were so upset by what we did. But
in that sense, though, like you and Dino and Robert, though Robert is. He's a little more cartoon thinking, but I mean, wasn't that part of the agenda? Was it to push the envelope?
Well, when we did the show, ABC had NYPD Blue on the air, and they had created something new in television, which was a watershed hour. That in British television they have a watershed hour.
Right.
After a certain hour, you can do absolutely anything you want. Nudity, doesn't matter, because they just figure kids have gone to sleep. That's how they handle it.
Yeah.
If you're dirty, you go after watershed. Well, ABC started saying words like shit and asshole on NYPD Blue. That was brand new.
Yeah.
So I think actually we were on honestly, I think we were on 9 o'clock because we were right before NYPD Blue.
Right.
And so that's what they said. You're the first show before that time, so you can be really edgy. We want you to get in trouble. We want you to make waves. That's what they told us.
The wrong group of guys to do that.
So we came on. I was actually the head writer, and Robert was the executive producer. He wanted to make me head writer because he wanted to be on. He was in the cast. He wanted to be able to do both. And but then after we signed during the summer that we developed the show, ABC was sold to Disney. That's when that happened.
Right.
ABC was bought by Disney, and so we all of a sudden everything changed.
Yeah.
And they said they didn't stop saying you're on before NYPD Blue. They started saying you're on right after Tim Allen. That became the focus of the show.
Right.
And they put Dana on a huge 2-page ad in TV Guide with his arm around Kermit the Frog.
Oh, my God.
A picture he never posed for.
Yeah.
And he was furious.
Yeah.
And the expectation for the show was this is going to be very sweet. And Dana's a sweet guy. He's not a guy you think of as irreverent.
Well, when you were trying to sell him on the breastfeeding thing, what was that like?
He loved it. I mean, Dana was a gamer. I loved him.
Yeah.
Dana's a great guy, and he's an enormously talented, just funny actor, and he's got old chops. He's a real traditional. He's like Sid Caesar or something.
Right.
I thought the show had great potential because of what he could do and what he was willing to do.
Yeah.
He was willing to do anything.
Right. And I think, okay, so now if we move into like the other stuff, I think one of the other turning points, you have this uncanny ability to really hold on to small bits of wisdom that sort of define your life for a while. You know, and I've noticed that, you know, people who, and this is for me included, but you also, that people whose fathers were, you know, primarily absent tend to try to put their life together on their own.
That's a really interesting observation. I think that's true.
You know, where you're sort of scrambling for the right role models and the wisdom that's going to guide you, you know, through your creativity, through your life, things that you can, you know, like sort of these mental marking posts of like, you know, that thing means something to me and it can help me. And I remember when Francis Ford Coppola was a guest on Conan, and you guys were doing Bad Fruit Theater.
Yeah.
Which was really just small puppetry with rotten fruit, you know, from movie scenes. And you were like really obsessed with this. You know, we're going to do Apocalypse Now. You brought me in to do Dennis Hopper's voice.
Yeah, I remember.
And I think like the Dennis Hopper Rotten Peach, you know, fell off its thing. You know, but you were you so wanted Francis Ford Coppola.
Deal for me,
right?
Yeah.
You really wanted Coppola to acknowledge your genius for taking a scene from his movie and doing it with rotten bananas.
Yeah, that was the biggest deal in the world to me.
It was like, I remember, because you're like, this is a big opportunity, because you were a filmmaker, and I think, you know, outside of being a stand-up, once you started making films, you really saw yourself as a filmmaker.
That's what I wanted to do, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was obsessed with Coppola because that movie Heart of Darkness had come out.
Right.
A documentary about Apocalypse Now. And that was a massive inspiration. That made me believe that I could be a filmmaker because the way
how crazy he was,
and how he worked against the odds and made that happen. He made that movie happen without anyone really wanting him to.
Yeah, and he had a large enough personality and enough talent to people where people would tolerate.
Yeah, and there was a moment, and when you talk about little things that have been guiding principles for me, that one has like eight of them in him, and one of them was. This guy in the movie saying the way Francis operates is he wants to make a movie, he just starts making the movie.
Yeah.
He doesn't wait for permission or for even the money. He just starts making the movie. And he figures if I start making the movie, people start joining along. And that's how I've done everything since then. Just start making it and give it a life. You know?
Well, that always amazed me about you, and we'll come around to that in a minute, is that, you know, you wrote an entire you would write these scripts that were based on ideas that, like, you know, I would have if I had the idea, be like, that's ridiculous. And you would have this ridiculous idea and
write a movie about it,
What was that fucking script, The Beard?
Oh, Annie's Beard. Yeah.
What was that about?
That was about a woman, like a pretty young woman.
Yeah.
Who works in show business. Based on Lorne Michaels' assistants. He had all these blonde assistants back then. Like a mean-spirited pretty girl who works for a big studio mogul.
Yeah.
And drives a Jetta, you know, whatever. And one day she's talking on the phone.
Yeah.
She's driving, and she plows into a kid and kills a kid.
Yeah.
And the kid happens to be a girl who has a beard, like a full man's beard.
See, right there I would stop the movie idea.
Exactly. So she has this beard, and you just see it. It's not made a big deal out of. You just see when you see the kid get hit, the kid has a beard.
Yeah.
And so she's vilified by the L.A. community, you know, the press.
Yeah.
Big sensational trial of the woman who killed it. Gorgeous, rich woman on a phone killing a kid. It would be, you know. So she's on trial, and the kid has a little, the dead girl has a brother who says, what happens is the family of the girl is so nice, and they don't want to ruin this woman's life. They don't want her to go to prison. They go to the judge and say, please don't ruin her life. We lost our little girl. We don't want it. And the judge is very moved by this. And and the little boy says that he tells this story that their father had a beard.
Yeah.
And he died.
Yeah.
And that the girl willed herself to grow a beard as a monument to him.
Yeah.
And said, as long as I wear this beard, he'll never die.
Yeah.
and now she's gone.
Yeah.
So could she grow a beard? The little boy asks the judge. I can't believe I wrote this. And so the judge says you have to get a beard put like really, not like a fake beard, but you have to really
grow a beard
and keep it for the 10 years you would have done in prison. And so there's this scene where they graft a beard onto her, like they do this whole crazy, it was this fucking insane thing, and she wears a beard. And she has a probation officer who just makes sure, like gives it a tug and makes sure it's there always.
Yeah.
She's not allowed to obscure it, you know.
Yeah.
And there's a whole thing where she goes and tries to wear like she goes to like a store where they sell burqas and other Middle Eastern, and learns about concealing beauty and what that means to Muslims and stuff. And it destroys her life. She can't work in television. She can't. It's a cosmetic industry.
Yeah.
So it's about her coming to terms with her life and her value as a person.
And her beard.
At one point, she shaves it and runs off, and there's like helicopters chasing her like The Fugitive. It's fucking crazy. But, no, it was a mess. But I was obsessed with it. I tried to get it made for like 3 years.
And
it broke my heart.
That you didn't get it made?
Never made it, never will.
And then there was I guess, we should talk, quickly about the Pootie Tang debacle. Because, I mean, I think a lot of people that love you, look at that movie as this, cult movie.
Yeah.
And I remember when you were going through that you had a very specific vision for that movie, and it was the first time you had studio backing. And then you had to go through that process where the studio, gutted you, took your power away, and then stole your movie.
That's right. It's terrible.
And like I just remember that there was this when you had your first cut, and you were ready to go, and they screened it, and who was the big executive? She was famous that sat there.
Well, Sherry Lansing was running Paramount at the time,
and they sat down with that movie that you were ready, that you were done with.
Yeah,
and you were there, and what happened?
Well, I went out to L.A. for a screening. Really, John Goldwyn was the main guy that we dealt with there. He was Samuel Goldwyn's grandson, this guy.
So you, of course, attached a great legacy, knowing you, that's sort of like you're part of movie
that was a
history.
Big deal. Yeah, that was a big deal to me. And I still, to me, it's like...
You remind me more of John Milius, actually, than Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah, probably with, But I loved that experience, even in its at worst time. I was very unhappy. It was very stressful. And there were times where it's one of those things where your back gets put against the wall, and then it feels like somebody's pushing on your chest, but you don't have anywhere to go. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Things got worse and worse, and I started to wonder what my capacity was.
As a filmmaker.
As a human being. I wasn't sure what my capacity was to take the stress I was taking on.
So you made this
and
cut.
The fear that I was living
right.
with.
But your vision as a filmmaker is fairly specific, and that was a fairly specific
I
take.
made that movie exactly the way I wanted to. And in cutting it, I found out, first of all, that I had made a flawed movie. Like, it wasn't good.
Yeah.
I didn't make a beautiful movie that Paramount destroyed. I made a flawed movie that didn't really hang together as a feature. I would, with the wisdom I have now, I would have, if I were them, just let it be released the way I made it.
Yeah.
And just see what happens. It wasn't a big risk. It was a $3 million movie.
Yeah.
And Chris Rock was in it.
Yeah.
It made its money back the first weekend. It was fine.
Yeah.
I would have just let it go because they wasted an enormous amount of money recut. They recut for almost a year. And they just poured money into it trying to make it better, and it never was going to be any better. It just got worse.
But did you get that feeling during that time? Because I remember the time where there's a story about about Ken Kesey and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which was a stage play. He agreed to letting them make the stage play from his book, but he did not sign off on the movie.
Right.
And there's that story where they figured out a legal loophole, and they based the movie on the stage play. And an interviewer asked Kesey, "Did you go see the movie?" And he said, "Look, if a couple of Hell's Angels came to your door and knocked on your door and said, 'We're raping your daughter, you want to come out and watch?'
Yeah.
Would you go?"
No, it's a good way to put it. But I didn't think of that movie as my kid. Also, I signed on to it. When we first started talking about doing Pootie Tang, they were going to do it with Paramount Classics, which was like their little indie arm. And they were going to make it for $2 million. And I was so excited. And then they said they wanted to make it for $3 million and do it with Paramount proper and give it to John Goldwyn and make it as a real, even though it wasn't a lot of money, as a studio movie. And I said I didn't want to do it because I thought that would destroy it. I didn't think I could work under that.
Yeah.
Not on Pootie Tang.
Right.
It's a crazy idea.
But then the interesting thing about knowing how politics in show business work, which I think this was the big lesson for you, is that they then took the movie and they hired people you knew and had worked with on the Chris Rock show, which you also wrote.
That's right, and also movies on my little short movies. I had a lot of people on it. Rick Shapiro was in Booty Tang.
Well, but I
all
mean,
these
just
guys
in
I'd done this goofy stuff with.
Right, but in the sense that they were going to take your movie and then rewrite it and recut it.
Oh, you mean when they went to redo it?
Yeah.
They hired Ollie Leroy, who was a writer. He was one of my friends, one of the writers I worked with on Chris Rock. Yes.
Now, did that destroy relationships for you, or at some point did you
No,
just
we're not
accept?
friends now.
Oh,
I hated what he did to the movie, but I don't know. His job was different than what my job was, so
Right.
I look at it very differently now. But at the time, I was pissed off at him.
So getting
for
back
taking
to
the job and for
hurting
the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So getting back to the Coppola episode of Conan, because I remember what he said to you, that out of all this expectation,
I'm more interested in what do you remember, because I wonder
what
do you remember that happened?
Well, I remember that that you really wanted him to recognize.
Yeah,
him.
I wanted to get a big ups from him.
Yeah, you'd done this thing with the bananas.
It took days.
Yeah, to write this scene. It was this scene where you're going to say he was a wise man, he was a kind man,
yes.
He had plans, he had wisdom. Bullshit, man. and that you really wanted Coppola to sort of tip his hat at you for this great puppet show that you put on from his thing.
Yep.
And he sort of iced you a little bit.
I said, hey, somebody introduced us. This is Louis C.K. He's the one who created the fruit thing that you saw, that you just watched.
Yeah.
And Coppola smiled tightly and went, it's very nice, thanks.
But then the thing that he said to you was, do you have kids?
No, I don't remember that. Tell me what that is. I don't remember that.
He asked you if you had kids, and you said you didn't. And he says, well, you can't be a real man unless you don't know what it's like to work. Unless you have children.
Oh, my God, I don't remember that.
Well,
Did Coppola say that to me?
Well, I believe that's my recollection, because I thought, because I remember it, because you said it to me, and it must have had something to do with the fact that it was a puppet show.
Yeah, yeah.
And he basically said, well, you don't know what it's like to have responsibility, that what you extrapolated from it was that, how can I, if you don't have a responsibility to other people, how do you really know what it's like to be an adult?
Yeah, that's very true. I think that's very true.
Yeah, well, that's what I remember.
I think I remember him saying something like that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know why I would remember it and you wouldn't.
It's funny.
But...
Well, because that's sometimes you give people things in your life and they remember them and you don't.
Yeah, because I think it's very indicative of how you think.
There was a library that Alexander the Great built in Alexandria, sitting in Egypt, and it had all the great Greek works of Greek literature and philosophy and art, everything.
Right.
And then when we became a Christian West world, they burned the Christians burned everything.
Yeah.
And they burned that library down or whatever. I don't know. I could be wrong about all this. But we still have a little bit of Plato and Socrates.
Yeah.
Very little. There was a lot more.
Yeah.
Because the Muslims kept it. Because when the Muslims did their run of conquering the world, they kept stuff. They didn't burn other people's work.
Right.
They would integrate it and save it.
Right.
So we have all Greek literature and philosophy and all that stuff exists because the Muslims held on to it while we were going through the Dark Ages and forgetting everything and letting this Jesus-y shit ruin everything.
Yeah.
And then when we came out of the haze, the Muslims were there saving it for us.
Yeah, and that was, you used that to sort of exemplify.
You remembered this Coppola thing and I don't.
Yeah, this is very great about the way you think, because like you have minor problems in your life, and I always like, if it could be like, I really have to stop eating ice cream. And then you go off on like, because I was reading the autobiography of Theodore Roosevelt. And you have this way of taking these, global history of great movements to sort of like, as wisdom, which I think goes back to this idea that, when you have to parent yourself, you might as well.
Well, it's like what the Jews do. The Jews, they keep their whole people's history together, and it keeps guiding them, Mm-hmm. So, no, I definitely think, I definitely like stories. Yeah,
and the one other thing I wanted to bring up before we go into the other great memory, there were two things that happened at the Chelsea apartment, I think, that were great, was at some point in the middle of that fucking mess, you decided you were going to play trumpet. And you went out and bought a very expensive trumpet without any real plan in place to learn how to play trumpet. And you brought the trumpet home and you put it on the mantle and you jerked off. And after you jerked off, you realized that if you had just jerked off before you wouldn't have bought the trumpet?
Yeah, no, it's worse than that.
What?
Because I went to Times Square to buy the trumpet. That's where all the music stores are.
Yeah.
I just wanted to buy a trumpet to learn how to play trumpet, and I went into Sam Ash or one of those places, and there's all these, student trumpets.
Yeah.
For like, $100.
Yeah.
But I started going up there's a really nice one.
Yeah.
And the guy started showing me, here's like a nickel-plated, beautiful trumpet.
Yeah.
It's got a flawed bell because it was hurt, but they repaired it.
Yeah.
And it was like $1,400.
Yeah.
I didn't have any of that kind of money.
Yeah.
But I went to an ATM and I took out like everything I had in the bank.
Yeah.
And I bought this fucking $1,400 trumpet without having any ability or I'd never even blown into a trumpet before.
Yeah.
And then I was walking through Times Square with this fucking thing in my hand, just freaking out and feeling bad.
Yeah.
And I went and ducked into what they used to have then, those fucking porn the peep shows.
Yeah.
Next thing I know, I'm in a peep show booth, those little upright coffins, looking at a chick, a tired fucking Latvian girl probably, through the window of this peep show and jacking off.
Yeah.
And it's like a 2 foot by 2 foot room.
Yeah.
And I jerk off and I came on the trumpet case, which was standing between my legs.
Yeah.
And once I came and I looked at this cum on the trumpet case, on this beautiful, brass buckled trumpet case.
Yeah.
I realized if I had come to this peep show first, I wouldn't have. I could have saved $1,400. I wouldn't have the fucking trumpet now, which I never really learned how to play. Yeah. It was an important thing for me to realize that.
In what way?
Well, I the only time I went to a therapist for a while, and he started dragging me through my past, and I couldn't do it. It was exhausting. I couldn't do it. And I also didn't see an end to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I started saying to him, I don't want to do this anymore. Can you just give me some advice?
Yeah.
Can we just boil it down to how the fuck do I get out of my own way?
Yeah.
And he told me, all right, well, when you do things that you regret all the time, like eating bad food or jacking off in a weird, shameful situation you wish you hadn't, sexual compulsions behavior, eating compulsions. He said, you're not, the issue isn't the food or the sexual object.
Yeah.
It's anxiety. You're having anxiety and you're doing these things to try to
feel better,
deal with your anxiety.
Right.
And maybe if you tell yourself that in the moment, it might help you. And that was an enormous help. I mean, that's sort of what I told myself with the trumpet, which is every time I'm starting to have like a thing that I'm not in control of.
Right.
Like I want to buy a motorcycle. This happened the other day. I want to buy a fucking Triumph Bonneville motorcycle. I have no business buying a motorcycle, but I poured over the website, started reading reviews of Triumphs, and trying to talk myself into it's okay to spend $8,000 on a motorcycle. But I'm practiced now at stopping and going, why are you looking at? It's got nothing to do with motorcycles. You're anxious. Something's irritating you, and in just the act of doing that, cuts you off of the. Sometimes
that helped me just now because that's what I realized that with myself that I'm not a depressive, but when I get anxious, I get overwhelmed and paralyzed.
Yeah,
and that the only thing you can do is to feel better.
Jacking off is a great way to get rid of anxiety.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah. It's built in.
It's not sexual, and knowing that
it's right. It's not sexual.
Very helpful.
It is
very helpful to know this is just I'm having a function.
The moment where, because I don't know when it happened because of whatever our relationship is, but at some point, creatively, you were making these absurdist films and you were respected for that, and they were great. All of them are very great. But your stand-up was still at this place where you're like, I have a peach.
Yeah.
And then at some point, and some people in the community were surprised by the transition because you were really a uniquely poetic absurdist comic. And you got a lot of respect for that. Right. But then all of a sudden, something broke in you.
Yeah.
And you were all of a sudden doing, personal revelation comedy. I mean, you were a guy that if an audience member, interrupted you, you were like, I don't even know what to do with that.
Yeah.
You didn't even know how to do crowd work because it was beyond you.
Yeah, the act I was doing was kind of meta. It was kind of absurdist comedy. I wasn't really functioning as a stand-up.
Yeah.
How you guys doing?
Yeah.
I wasn't that kind of guy.
Right. You were doing if anyone interrupts this process, it's
I'm thrown off. Yeah.
Right.
This is fake.
Yeah. So what was the moment, if there or a series of moments that made you snap and get angry and realize that life is pummeling me, and this has to be relevant?
Well, I think it was. I guess it was having children. I guess having kids was a big revelation for me because everything in my life that meant anything to me was work and stuff, and
jerking off and ice cream and
that was like in this muddled outskirts of my life, this thing that I had to do because it was me patching together a personal life.
Yeah, but you were also you're a warrior in the sense that there was a time where you and Attell and DePaul, you and Attell were battling for superiority, in a fairly.
And he won that. He won that.
That round, yeah.
Yeah, he became the biggest comic in New York, and I just felt like I kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking.
But it was a very conscious thing that you guys were friends, and there's nothing wrong with healthy competition.
No.
And the way that you both saw each other. I had him on the show last night, and he was manic and brilliant, but he's a very different animal than you.
Totally different.
And the thing is that there was this real sort of leader of the pack shit going on, and you've always had that the struggle to be recognized for being the best fucking comic, that all of a sudden now you have kids and your life is no longer just about executing your will as a comedic talent and being recognized. You're responsible for other people.
Yeah, definitely.
And that sort of must have imposed on your sense of narcissism. Yeah. To have that responsibility. And I think the struggle of that first special, which I think redefined you, was you struggling with the fact that you might have a problem, a competitive problem with your children.
Right.
They were an imposition on your life.
Yeah,
but you loved them.
Yes. Well, they were an imposition because I loved them.
Yeah.
If I didn't care about them, there wouldn't have been an issue.
You'd just be one of those dads. Yeah, I got kids.
Yeah.
I don't know what
I can't really spend much time with them, but they're there somewhere. I mean, like when you read about people, famous, great guys from the past, and their kids just were completely and utterly ignored by them.
And fucked up now.
And everybody just thinks that was a byproduct of how great that person was, and we all give them a pass for it. That's the way a lot of people think of that.
But I also remember a lot of this impetus about how you were going to handle kids and how you were going to break a pattern was that your father split.
Yeah, I wasn't going to do what my dad did. I also just, it was a huge thing for me, because I always thought that every second of my life should be poured into work and doing what I want to do.
And winning.
Yeah, and yet, well, I never looked at it that way. I've always been obsessed with the things the projects that I'm doing.
Right.
I always get obsessed with them as work. I never really had this thought of I want to be the best, or I want to be seen, or I want to be recognized. I just really wanted to keep being able to do what I do. I love the work.
Yeah.
And part of the work is showing it to an audience. I never would want to exist in a vacuum and not. To me, the whole point is bringing this shit to crowds and making them laugh.
Right.
But anyway, I had seen a lot of 60 Minutes episodes where they talk about a guy like Bill Parcells or whoever, and he just look at how he's so manic and he's so amazing. And then they talk to his wife, and she always has this kind of smile and says, "We just know that we don't see Bill from." September 1st to February 15th. And that's, you make a deal with yourself that's okay, and I love him. And they always say, and then at the end of the episode, Morley Safer says, they're divorced now. Yeah. So I always remember that and seeing the kids going, Dad loves football, and not much else.
Yeah.
And I always thought that's really not okay. If you're going to have kids, you should don't have kids if you're going to do that. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I didn't. When I had my daughter, when her mother had her in front of me, everything changed. I just fell in love with this kid. I just felt. I remember she was screaming in the delivery room, really upset. She seemed particularly upset. I mean, kids are supposed to cry when they're born, but she seemed angry to me and upset. Like I expected, just when a kid's crying in the delivery room, everybody's smiling.
Yeah.
Oh, look at her cry. You know, but I was really upset for her.
Yeah.
And they put her on this little table, and they're putting stuff around her. Sorry.
It's all right.
Unexpectedly emotional. It's not a story that I tell a lot, so.
It's all right, man.
Let me have some water. Water is good. It washes away your love for your children, so you can talk without a shaking voice. Yeah, they put her on this little table, and they're fucking jabbing shit into her, and they're just rough with her, and she's screaming, and her mother, it was a C-section, so her mom was being sewn up. Her mom was just taken away.
Right.
And I'm like in the middle of this. I'm between her mother, like, do I care for, also, her mother is who I'd been caring for. She'd been pregnant for 9 months, and I'd been caring for her.
Yeah.
And it all had been about her, the mother. The thing that happens when you have a baby is, for the better part of a year, you live with pregnancy.
Right.
And it's all about that.
Right.
And then you sort of feel when the woman's in labor, you just think this is about getting this woman through this.
Right.
And when it's done, we're going to go, that she and I are going to go home.
Right.
You really don't, as much as you think you understand, you don't really understand that it's someone else.
You just know you got to go to the hospital.
You got to go to the hospital and get through this thing that we've been taking classes about. We've been reading books about it.
Yeah.
I've been coping with her emotional instability and her volatile, suddenly we're going to build a new kitchen. I got to go buy wood, I mean, stuff like that. And she was really into her pregnancy, and I was there with her.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just don't know till you see the kid's face that there's somebody who's now going to be with you for the rest of your fucking life.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know how that would feel. But when she came out, it wasn't about my feelings.
Yeah.
It was, this kid is scared shitless, and she's really angry of being taken out of her mom.
Yeah.
And I was pulled for 1 second. There's this woman that's been the center of all this.
Yeah.
She just got cut in fucking half in front of me.
Yeah.
They just made a hole in her belly and took this kid out. And she's being sewn up, and she's alone.
Yeah.
And this kid's over there, and she's alone, and I'm in the middle.
Yeah.
So I went to the kid.
Yeah.
And I got my head next to hers, and I said, she's screaming, purple face.
Yeah.
I said, it's okay, it's okay. You're going to be okay. It's all right. I'm here.
Yeah.
And she stopped screaming on a dime, turned and looked right at me.
Uh-huh.
And, kids can't see an inch in front of them until they're like a couple weeks old.
Yeah.
But she turned her head and opened her eyes and looked at me and stopped crying.
Oh, my God.
And everybody, all these practiced people said, oh, my God, she heard you. One person said she heard you, and then one woman who I didn't know what it was, I just heard a voice say, she knows who you are.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah.
And then somebody at that moment stuck a fucking pin in her foot or something and had blood and just screamed again. But I didn't understand that I had a role in this kid's life until that moment.
Right.
And so it became about this kid, and she changed everything. And one way that she changed it was I expected her to be unhappy. I figured my whole
in general,
just because she lived in someone's belly and she was this, living this perfect life, and then you're taken out to where your skin is raw and being hit by the atmosphere and you cough all the time and you just, what an awful life. That's the way I always looked at it. Like, it's just terrible. And the moment you're born, you're coping.
Yeah. Right out of the gate.
You must just be
this
awful.
Is it. Yeah.
You shit and piss and just, diapers and just, what an awful life. But after that bout of crying, she was, within an hour she was breastfeeding and she was happy.
Yeah.
I watched her eat her first meal. And I watched her shit her first shit. Like, I saw the system start working right in front of me.
Right.
And she dealt with it beautifully.
Yeah.
And I was inspired by her.
Well, it's interesting that
having a positive attitude about life.
Well, that moment where I think that happens when you're primarily want to have control of your life and the people in your life, and to a certain degree, and that you were there for your wife, and that moment of concern where you realize, like, there is this raw life in front of you.
Yeah.
And on some level, outside of you being the father, you really have no control.
No, I just had huge sympathy for this kid.
Right.
That was the main feeling that I had. And everything started to flow from that. And I also found out, I mean, I don't like babies as a human. Like, I'm not wired for that. And before I had kids, I was really worried about having kids because I don't like being around babies. I didn't like them. I didn't feel sympathy for babies in the past.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how I would I thought it would just be taxing to be have someone screaming or crying, to not be allowed to things on paper that you know about being a parent. You don't sleep very much. They get you up in the middle of the night. I was like,
you knew all that.
Yeah, and I was like, I can't do that. Pregnancy gives you some training for that because your wife gets up in the middle of the night. She has to pee. She needs help.
Yeah.
Pregnancy is like a perfect training program for having a kid. It's the closest you can get anyway. But anyway, what I learned was that I could do it all. I didn't mind getting up. I didn't mind being bleary and unsleepy. I didn't mind her screaming and crying because I just had sympathy for her because I wanted her to be okay. So I found out that I'm a patient person. I didn't know any of this about myself. I'm a patient person, that I had capacity for love, for giving love and affection that I didn't know that I had, and receiving it, and that I was really interested in teaching her and talking to her and interacting with her, all this stuff that I never knew I had. So it made me, and all this stuff about my own anxiety about my life just went away because I didn't give a shit. I instantly knew that I'm going to get old and die, and I wasn't afraid of it anymore because it's about her now. It's about giving her a chance to be happy and have her own confidence in her own life. That's what it became about. But it was a struggle. That I didn't give up without a fight, like you said. In the special, and I laugh at that special for different other reasons than other people. I laugh at it because I was such a young dad. That shit's old school to me now. Your kid gets you up at night, so what?
But I also think it represents the conflict of it sounds to me what happened was, you've got to accept that, as I do, that we are and can be extraordinarily narcissistic. And we have those feelings that we create our world and we comment on our own brains, and you were primarily commenting on things that you imagined, and that at that moment it seems where you became emotional and in the moment where it really happened was that it shattered your narcissism.
It also taught me to be a man. It did what Coppola said it would. It taught me to be a man because you can't fuck around when you have kids.
Right.
You can't afford to go into a depression. You can't afford to go eat yourself into a stupor and lay on the floor. You can't do it. The kid needs to be taken care of, and the kid needs to be supported. I suddenly had a reason to earn money that was real.
And this whole thing is what really defined the next phase of your creativity.
Yeah,
because all these struggles are still real to you. You still eat ice cream, but now
I still
you
do
have
that stuff. But I've learned, and also I started to look at shit as a real man does. In other words, instead of going like, I'll have an idea when I have it, and fuck the fucking system, and the studios are assholes.
Yeah.
And, why isn't I getting the gigs? All that kind of stuff. Waiting around, expecting shit to just happen. I couldn't do it anymore. I had to start going like, okay, what do you want to do? Make plans. Make actual plans.
Yeah.
And execute them. Have an idea of how you're going to do it. Approach it as a very important thing that you do, and it's your job. Take it really seriously and be dedicated to it, not just in how you feel, but in how you live your life.
You can't live like a child anymore.
You can't do it anymore.
Right.
And can't do it. So that's when I started doing that. And I looked at guys like Carlin and Chris Rock and building a thing from a whole hour from the ground up. How do you do it? There has to be a way. These other people did it. Maybe I can do it. I'd been doing the same fucking absurd 40 minutes. I could never get above 40.
Yeah.
I was doing the same absurdist, silly 40 minutes of stand-up for a good 15 fucking years.
Give or take 25
close
minutes.
To 20.
Yeah, but no, I mean like...
give or take 20, 25 minutes. I would kind of switch in and out, but it's the same same backbone, and I hated it. I hated what I was doing. I'd outgrown, but I didn't know how to do anything else.
Right. And then the gift of real life hits you in the head, and you realize...
It made me go, I really have to actually try. I actually have to go up on stage and not be afraid of bombing, not because I'm so cool, but because it's my fucking job. It's my responsibility.
But also, I think...
I need a future as a stand-up. I have a child.
Right. And also, I think you're probably not giving yourself credit for the fact that the evolution of your creativity, because I think you've always been a poet in the sense that you struggle to understand large struggles that people live in their life. Mm-hmm. And that you have a way of focusing down and capturing moments that are very specific. Like I brought up to you after I saw your Tonight Show thing, and this is when our relationship was a little strained. But there are moments to me that the moments I appreciate about your stand-up, are not necessarily the end of the joke or the flow of the joke.
Right.
But it was just that one moment where on the airplane where the guy's crouched, go into the smile, like like go ahead, and he's crouched in that horrible smile, and he said that's the last smile left in America. Is that the line?
Right. That's the last smile left in America.
Yeah, and I said that's fucking great, and you were like, I didn't even do the whole bit.
Right.
And I didn't. It didn't matter. That you were able to take what was fundamentally an absurd understanding of things and the way you created imaginary scenarios to sort of do your observational comedy and apply that same sense of poetry to real life struggles and conflicts. And it's always there.
Yeah.
So it's just an evolution of your creativity.
No, and I learned through this shit I did early on how to build jokes and how to make stuff work. Yeah. I mean, I think I still use the same fundamental skills that I had then. But I'm just applying them to something that people actually want to hear about for the first time, I think.
And I think that comics should know, if you're listening, and regular people, that the way you work now is that you literally let your old material die.
Yeah, I kill it every year, about every year.
What, literally, like you force yourself. You say, like,
never do it again. Yeah.
And you hold to that.
Yeah, for the most part, I do. I've had a few shows where I've crossed myself and said sorry to whoever I'm supposed to say sorry to, and did an old bit, but it's rare. This is the hardest time I've had so far doing that.
Well, what's this? Your 5th hour?
This is I mean the number 4 went into the series. I did Shameless was the first time I did that. The first special was Shameless. Shameless was I did a half hour for HBO before that.
Right, I remember
built
that.
from the ground up. But that was
years ago.
30 minutes. No, not that one from back then.
Oh.
When I did Lucky Louie,
right,
the deal I made was a pilot and a half hour.
Oh, okay.
So I did a half hour one night stand,
right,
about the kids and stuff.
Yeah.
That was my first.
Oh, that
time
was
doing
the kids one. But that broke you in the second wave of the Louie career.
That and Lucky Louie came out exactly at the same time.
Right.
And so that was the first time, and I'd done a half hour. It was about 40 minutes, but it was boiled down to half an hour that I hadn't had material I hadn't had a year before.
Right.
That was the first time I'd done that.
Right.
And then Lucky Louie, we shot the series.
Yeah.
And we wrapped in March of 2005 or 6. I can't fucking remember. And we didn't go on the air till June. We had a huge chunk of year where I just was waiting to see if the show was a success.
Yeah.
So I went on the road because I wanted to do an hour. I had this big thing in my head about getting 1 hour done.
Yeah.
And it's the smartest thing in the world I ever did because my thought was if I get canceled, I'll have something to build on to keep my life going.
Right.
If I get renewed, I'm probably on the air for years.
Right.
And I do believe if Lucky Louie had gone season 2, it would have gone season 10, whatever I wanted. It just needed to get over that one hump. So I thought if I got the show, I'm going to retire as a comedian.
Right.
So this is my last chance to do an hour.
Right.
Or the show's going downhill.
Yeah.
I got to be a stand-up.
Right.
And so I started from scratch and built an hour of stand-up on the road.
And that was the first hour special?
First time I did it.
And what was that special called?
Shameless.
Right.
And I did it, and Lucky Louie got canceled in September while I was in the middle of that. It's the smartest thing in the world I did because I became obsessed with that hour.
Yeah.
And I actually started thinking, I don't know if I want to go back to work because I was loving stand-up like I hadn't for years and years. Because every show was high stakes.
Yeah.
Every show meant something because it was building that thing, and every show was new material, so it was scary.
Yeah.
And to watch this stuff actually work, and I learned all this shit about developing stand-up and developing an hour. And then in September, they canceled the show. And I said, can I please have a fucking hour? And they felt bad, the people that I worked for at HBO, and they said, yeah, and they gave me an hour.
And then how many? And then Shameless.
And I shot that in November.
And then after that came All Chewed Up.
So after Shameless, I thought I know how to do this now. I want to do it immediately again, and I immediately started. I threw away every minute of it. That was the first time I thought of that idea, which is don't ever do this shit again.
Yeah.
And so when I finished shooting Shameless, I decided I'm never telling those jokes again, never. And I'm going to start a new hour. So I went on tour, and now I was doing theaters and starting to make because Shameless did very well for me. I started selling real tickets. So I was doing some clubs, some theaters, and I spent a year building Chewed Up and got that on film. Did that for Showtime.
And you premiered the film, right? Was that Chewed Up? Was that the film?
No, Chewed Up was just on Showtime. It was just a Showtime special.
And now, what's the movie?
The movie is then the next after Chewed Up was done, I started working right away again on a new special.
Mm-hmm.
That one fucking got huge. That one became like, I was doing 2-hour shows in big theaters around the country without any material from Shameless or Chewed Up. And I had been doing nothing but stand-up since Lucky Louie.
Yeah.
Like I'd been living as a professional comedian without any other TV job, nothing else, for the first time in my life.
Yeah.
I've always had some other gig since Conan.
Right.
And I was just so into I just breathing and living stand-up, and it was great because I had divorced.
Yeah.
And I was able to be with my kids for the early part of every week and then go do stand-up. It was like a perfect career companion to my home life.
And then you shot that as a film.
And then I had so much material, and also Shameless and Chewed Up were still on TV, so nobody wanted a new one from me.
Right.
And so I had this idea to do it as a feature film. And I went and shot it in Milwaukee and shot it.
A stand-up concert movie, which hasn't happened in years. No one's done one in years.
There's no need for them because there's HBO, but it's still an experience that I wanted to try to do.
And what's going on with that film?
It showed at Sundance, did really well there. And then we had one night where we showed it in 8 cities in theaters.
And how'd it go?
It sold out every show. And then we showed it again in New York City for 2 shows last night or the night before. It's showing in Philadelphia, I think.
And you think you're going to get big distribution on it?
Well, no, we won't.
Right.
I mean, we Epix is going to show it starting this weekend, starting Saturday.
How do you get Epix?
I don't know. I don't have it. I don't have it. All I know is that they were willing to throw it on TV, and they were willing to throw it on without... Because Comedy Central owns it. Comedy Central paid for it.
Yeah.
But Comedy Central is going to cut it down to 60 minutes from 90, and they're going to bleep it, which I knew going in.
And Epix paid you some money?
Epix paid me some money. They gave a little to Comedy Central and some to me. And they threw it on. They're going to put it on. And people will be able to see it on Epix uncut. And they can also go to epixhd.com, I think, and they can download it as a whole piece.
Okay.
So it's going to be available as its own thing for a long time. But so that was that hour. But that hour was that was number 3.
Yeah.
And then after I did that, I quickly got to number 4. I got to my 4th hour really quickly. And then I got the series.
Right.
And the series has stand-up in it.
Yeah.
So that 4th hour is cut in pieces. It's in the 13 episodes of Louie.
So now you're working on your 5th hour.
I got my 5th hour, which start this Friday in San Francisco, and I've got the hour ready, but through the fall it'll get refined, and I'm taking that on tour, and it's going to be the next series.
Okay.
It's going to be next season. I wish I could do more specials, but I can't do it. I can't do a special and have the same material in the show. I think that's ripping people off. I don't want to do that.
Okay, well, see, that's a work ethic that no one has, and you do it without writers. No. I mean,
Right.
a lot of people work to the point, like, there's a lot of guys, and I don't need to mention names, who everybody knows that really haven't written their own jokes in 15 years.
Yeah, sure.
They become a personality. They hire writers.
Yeah,
and
they become a refillable. They become
Right.
a sort of just a rhythm that you can refill with any subject.
People can write for you, and
Yes.
you choose not to do that.
Yeah, that doesn't seem fun to me to do that.
Right, and that's an amazing feat, and I think any comic would know that. Now, I don't want to just rush over Lucky Louie, but I think that what happened there, and we don't have to go into the politics of it, but I remember you not dragging me. I was always happy to see what you made. No, I'm serious. You said I want you to watch this pilot. So you had the show at CBS, which wasn't right. That was Louie.
St. Louis was the first pilot I did, yeah.
Yeah, and that didn't go, but that made sense that it didn't go on some level. It wasn't going to honor you anyways. And then you did Lucky Louie, and then I remember you showed me the pilot, and the conceit of it was, once again, that it was very brilliant in the sense that you showed me this pilot, you explained to me, what it was. You said, look, what we're doing is we're doing the Honeymooners. That's what we're doing. And the set is the Honeymooners set. It is stripped down. We're doing, straight out, 1950s, 1960s television, where the action takes place in almost it was almost like television, like post vaudeville, where you're dealing with almost play sets.
Right.
And that was your idea, is that we're going to infuse a modern sensibility into a classic context. And that was the intellectual conceit of it. Mm-hmm. And it was like nothing that anybody had ever seen, and the rawness was like nothing anyone had ever seen. And the conceit, I think, ultimately, what happened was the conceit was lost. That the idea that we were doing the Honeymooners, and that there was something, an intellectual approach to taking something, classic,
right,
and updating it. I think some people were like, why didn't they make better sets?
Yeah, that's what some people said. And
Right.
I remember being on the phone with Chris Albrecht, who ran HBO at the time, and gave me the show. And he was laughing about reviews that said the sets are so poorly constructed.
Right.
And he said, why would we let that happen unless it was on purpose?
Right.
Like, do they really think that I'm reading... This is Chris Albrecht.
Yeah.
Does this reviewer really think I'm reading this and going, oh, God, we really should have put more money? I mean, look at what we do. Look at fucking The Sopranos and this heavy production they put into everything.
Yeah.
Why would we do that unless it was deliberate?
Right.
The reason I did it that way, I wasn't trying to go back to Honeymooners so much as I was trying to scale back what had happened to sitcoms that hadn't helped them.
Right.
Because I hated every sitcom on the air.
Right.
Even the good ones. Whatever. Seinfeld,
Right.
Friends,
Right.
Frasier.
Right.
I hated them because I didn't feel like I was watching anything that was really happening or even being... They were all shot on film, and they were all... I don't want to spend too much time on this because I could go on a long time. But I felt like the audience was being cheated by these shows.
Yeah.
And it wasn't only The Honeymooners, it was also All in the Family. Was
Right.
For me, the thing was that it used to be guys like performers like Jackie Gleason and what's his name? Fucking Carol
O'Connor.
Yeah, Carol O'Connor.
Yeah.
Were aware of their audience. They were. I remember seeing an interview with Jackie Gleason with a big long cigarette where he said, you can't do comedy without an audience because the audience tells you what to do. The audience tells you if it's funny. The audience tells you how long to sit with it. The audience tells you how to say it.
Yeah.
And it's true when you watch The Honeymooners that he was totally measured by the crowd as far as his rhythm and
Yeah.
he would, when he got his laughs, he would live inside those laughs by walking around.
Right, yeah, of course, right.
He
Milking
would,
it.
He would milk like you would hear a laugh dying.
Yeah.
And then he'd shoot a glance at the wife and the laugh would explode upward. And I love that kind of work. To me, that is a beauty in playing an audience like an instrument.
Now, let me. I don't know what the demise was, and you can tell me. And and I'm going to be honest with you. Do you think, because you're evolving into a very effective actor, do you think at the time that you did Lucky Louie that you were stifled by your acting ability?
Well, I didn't. I wish I'd done what Gleason did. You hear these stories that he never came to rehearsals.
Yeah.
Every cast member of that show that was ever interviewed tells that story. He didn't come to rehearsals. Every actor, every real TV actor really needs rehearsals in order to know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And everybody rehearsed without him. Mm-hmm. And then he would just come in and go, all right, what are we doing? And he'd know half his lines.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't know the blocking.
Yeah.
And they just learned how to work around that. I mean, they really were brilliant that they could do that.
Yeah.
They also recognized that he was the whole show.
Yeah.
And that even if he stumbled through a scene, he would save it.
Yeah.
And actually, that stumbling is what made the scenes great because he knew he'd have to save it.
Yeah.
When you're given a script and a week of blocking and rehearsal and repetitive and over again, all you got to do is do it.
Yeah, it kills the comedy.
Yeah, but when you are given when you put yourself on a high wire, I'm on a TV show, and back then everybody on the planet Earth watched The Honeymooners.
Yeah,
it wasn't like
right.
those who like HBO. It was like everybody. It was like 50 million people.
Yeah.
So in front of all those people, he'd be like, oh, okay, you could see him in some scenes, like, I'm not sure where I am or what's supposed to happen in this scene. I'm just going to do this. Bwah! And he would just be hilarious.
Yeah.
I wish I'd done that because I have better instincts as a comedian than I do as an actor. And we rehearsed like a motherfucker. We rewrote. So we did everything I didn't want to do. When we started doing that show, I said to Mike Royce, who was my partner, we're not going to have a writer's room full of writers who are perfecting the scripts and rewriting every little line and like pouring over it on a big screen where everybody chimes in.
Yeah.
We're not going to punch up everything and change out the fucking punchlines every take.
Yeah.
And we're not going to have this thing where we block and rehearse all this stuff. But we did it, and it just eased towards that because we had a staff of writers and because that's how people know how to do it.
Right.
If I could go back, I would have done it differently. I would have centralized the writing more, and I would have not rehearsed.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would have let them rehearse. The thing that changed it, though, was Pamela, who played my wife. She was like a comedy team with me. That was a huge revelation for me, to get laughs with a partner.
Right.
I had never done that before. That was a massive thing.
Right.
So, and Pamela came from traditional television, and she also said, trust some of these people, let them help you.
Yeah.
And I think that was smart.
But what was
Lucky Louie was harder than this series I'm doing now. It's just a huge amount of work. And you
what
also
was
have
the ultimate demise of it?
Well, a few things. I think the reason some people didn't like it is because what they had been fed in television didn't prepare them well for it. Everyone thought it was a laugh track. Everyone thought we put in fake laughs, and some people were really turned off by that.
So in the same way they didn't understand the context of the set,
yeah,
they made assumptions.
The set was the set because I just didn't give a shit what the set looked like.
Right.
The idea was we're going to go back to when these shows were funny, because they hadn't been, to me, funny in a long time.
And that meant doing it in front of real audience without amplifying the laughter.
Yeah, exactly. Putting an audience in front of the stage and letting their laughs be in the show.
And people didn't know better.
No, and actually...
So it was lost on them.
Yes, they just thought it was fake laughs and shitty sets and bad acting. Whereas we were holding for laughs, which TV sitcoms are written by Harvard graduates who don't like audiences. They don't like people.
Yeah.
They're not popular people.
Right.
And so they hate the idea that audiences can tell them whether something's funny or not.
Right.
So they've built a system where they shoot on a stage in front of an audience, but they ignore the audience.
Right.
And they feed them pizza. There's only 10 of them left when they finish shooting. Most big sitcoms don't have an audience now.
Right.
And they have a man called the Laugh Man, and he puts in the laughs.
Right.
And the laughs are short enough that the clippy dialogue can continue.
Right.
Jennifer Aniston never looks aware of the audience when she's supposed to be performing in front of an audience.
Yeah.
On Friends, that's how old I am.
Yeah.
But... we had to hold for laughs, and it was a mess, but it was supposed to be. But most people thought, and we even had a thing like in Happy Days, Lucky Louie was taped before a live audience.
Right.
We said that before every show.
Yeah.
And everyone would still say it's canned laughter. I even read something on a website where somebody said they should have told people that it was taped before a live audience. That was a big mistake. We did.
Yeah.
But people remember what they... Anyway, that's why people didn't like it, I think. Other people just didn't like it because nothing is perfect. A lot of people hate everything.
Right.
But we went off the air because HBO was changing. I mean, everybody that's there now that wasn't there when I was there.
Right. It was just one of those...
We got great ratings.
Yeah.
We got great ratings.
It was a great show. But now this is the miracle. This is the perfect storm. Is where we're at now, and you've got a deal now that comics are now telling their managers. So
I want the Louis C.K.
Give me the Louis C.K. deal.
That's what everybody says. Yeah.
Because you got all these different cable outlets. You aligned yourself with FX, who basically said, like, here's some money. You said, look, don't pay me a salary. Just give me this money, and I'll make these things.
Yeah.
And they trusted you enough. You had a big enough track record. You're a capable director. You're a capable comedy writer. You're a capable showrunner. You're a capable performer. And you're a stand-up. And they trusted you with that. You're like, it's like fucking, it's like Orson Welles.
Yeah.
Just and the money was nothing, right? I mean,
very little.
Not in the sense that, like, it was obviously money, but in the context of what money they throw away.
Yes.
On bigger
way more money. Yeah.
Right. And so you took this all on. And the amazing thing about what's happening now with this show, and, I watch it, and I love it, and I love you, but sometimes my resentment gets in the way. But I do a joke on stage now. I actually say I don't know when my friend's success is going to seem like anything but an attack on me. I don't, and I say, like, I don't know why Louis had to call his show "Fuck You, Mark Maron," but that's what comes up on my television. But the thing is what I know about you is, like, people are like, I don't, it's confusing to them sometimes because there's not a singular narrative.
Right.
It's got a feeling, a raw feeling that people are like, I don't know how to react to the show.
Yeah.
But what I know is that this is Louis C.K. investing all his talents of everything he's done and all his life experiencing, doing exactly what he wants to do.
Yes, that is what it is. Yeah.
And the amazing thing is that you're making short films.
Yeah.
You're doing stand-up. You're constructing narratives as they occur to you from your life experience.
Sometimes,
and also the amazing thing is your loyalty to the crew that you have worked with on your films throughout your entire career. That's more than the writers or anything else, because you're writing all these yourself. Yep. That your loyalty was to your cinematographer, to your set deck, and even to the point. Of the way you're lettering the credit letter.
My old Cooper Black lettering, yeah.
Right. So this is you being a filmmaker.
Yes.
More than anything else, and I don't know if people really understand that.
Yeah, some of them do, some of them don't, and it doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. And I mean, this has been a crazy dream. This thing, it's been amazing,
and it's successful.
Yeah,
they're going to do
doing another season. Yeah.
How many episodes?
13.
Now, how the fuck are you going to do that yourself?
Keep doing it? Well, I did it once, and I do ask myself that every day right now. And I'm already working on the writing. I'm trying to get the ideas. I don't want to take a step down from what I just did. I want to develop it. I want to get better. I think anything you do should be better than anything you did before. I mean, that to me is guiding principle.
Fine, but how are you going to do it physically?
Well, I just did it. I mean, I learned from just doing it. In other words...
Because a guy in your position now, like, why wouldn't you bring in writers?
Because that's not how it worked the first time. That would change everything. If I brought in a writing staff, it would change everything. The show wouldn't be good anymore. I mean, it wouldn't be what it is. Good or bad, whatever, but it wouldn't be what it is. So, I mean, I did it. I did one season. It was hard. It was really hard.
Yeah.
But
I did it.
Yeah, and I could only get better at it. Also, I had to do it without knowing how I was going to do it. Now I know how I pulled it off the first time.
A system is in place. You, out of necessity.
I have a company that we made. We had to do a huge amount of stuff that we never have to do again.
Right.
We had to find offices, some shit that's just simple, but we had to get, decide what system we were shooting on. We had to build a crew. We had to, hire a bunch of people, find a good workflow. We had to get fucking permits and a relationship with the state of New York and the city of New York, and all that. We had to bang out a union contract, all this stuff. We had to do all those things, and that was an enormous amount of work on top of, because I'm the head of the show, and everything comes back to me, even the union contracts and shit like that. So all that shit's done now. And we had to, it started with a pilot, not knowing what the show was going to be about.
Yeah.
So all that's done now, and I know how to do it. I mean, I edit the whole I write and edit the whole show on my MacBook Pro on a 13-inch. I didn't even use a 15-inch, let alone a 17, because I just like the intimacy of the little machine. I edited every episode on my little MacBook Pro.
Do you remember when you were editing Tomorrow Night on an Avid?
Yes.
That the process it took to transmit, to put it from film
to
onto
go to
the
an
computer,
Avid.
and then there was one Avid in the city.
That's right. No, Doug Abel, who's editing this show. I edit some episodes. He edited some episodes, but because I love editing. But Doug is my guy, and he edited.
And your cinematographer is
Paul Kessner, who I've been working with since I was fucking 22 years old.
And your set deck is Amy Silver.
My production designer is Amy Silver.
Yeah, who you've been working with forever.
Forever. Since Caesar Salad, my first short film that you were in, that you got cut out of.
I did cut out everything. I played guitar on the soundtrack.
Yeah, that's right, you did.
Was that Tomorrow Night or Caesar Salad?
Caesar Salad.
Okay.
But, I've been working with these people forever, and that's why I knew I could do it. I mean, when I went to FX, I had... everybody wants the Louis C.K. deal, but it's not gonna be so easy for everybody.
Well, no, because no one can. This is what I'm saying. Is it's that same thing as you got a comic. It's like, let me do that. Who the fuck can do that?
Well, I'm
exhausted listening to your process.
A lot of it is because of technical knowledge.
No, you're right.
It's because I took that fucking AV class in junior high school and learned how to fix
computer.
That's why. It's because I learned how to fix a fucking overhead projector, and I learned how to rewire shit and fix it.
Yeah.
That's why I know how to do this stuff. Because when I was in high school, I got an internship at a local access cable TV station, and they had remote deck and camera setups.
Yeah.
And they had editing bays. And the only reason they don't let you use shit in those places is because you might break it. They're just worried that you'll break it. It costs money.
Yeah.
But I fixed that shit. Like, I became this techie kid. I was like this little nerdy kid who would fix the fucking cameras.
Yeah.
So certainly they trusted me with it. Like, I had the keys to every room in that fucking station.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even tell anybody. I would just take the shit out.
Yeah.
And I would shoot my own little videos.
Yeah.
And I'd edit them when nobody was using the editing bay. I taught myself how to do everything.
Yeah, that's
my
you.
phone.
That's all right.
Sorry.
No problem.
So that's what always gave me the license to do this stuff. And I know everything about filmmaking, shooting on, we shoot on the Red, which is a high-tech, really difficult camera to use.
Yeah.
It breaks a lot. It fucks up. we use these huge master prime lenses, which are the kind of lenses they shoot movies on. They're enormously expensive. It's one of the biggest line items in our... We spend more on lenses than we do on anything else.
And it's interesting because your vision as a filmmaker and Paul's vision with you as a cinematographer, when you watch it, there's some parts of it where you're thinking like, it doesn't look... the way you shoot is not unlike Lucky Louie, that it's pretty stripped down. You're not using a lot of effects.
Sometimes. I mean, some shows, some of the episodes are shot like a handheld, let's just grab this moment. And some of them are shot like, no, we're using we're opening the lens all the way up. We have to measure everything.
Right,
but the religion episode is shot very carefully.
But the tone of it is still pretty raw.
Oh, yeah.
On
definitely.
purpose.
Yeah, definitely.
And the great thing about it is, like, there's a signature moment that is, completely your, comedic vision. All of it to me is that the scene where you're having the troubled date with Chelsea Peretti and she gets into a helicopter. This is Louis at his best. This is Louis, as Francis Ford Coppola in Heart of Darkness. We're like, I need a helicopter for this one punchline.
Yes.
This punchline requires we rent a helicopter and clear airspace.
Yes.
And you committed to that.
Yeah, exactly. No, we had people working on walkie-talkies and all kinds of stuff. Yes, we had to clear East Side Manhattan airspace to take a helicopter off a bunch of times.
For a punchline.
Yeah, for a punchline that most people, a huge amount of people I knew wouldn't like because it's so absurd.
But that's
a lot of people say it's not. It took me out of it. I don't care. I liked it. Those things like the helicopter exist for two reasons. One is because just I like it, and also I did like. I get off on squeezing a lot out of very little money, and the budget for this show was tiny, and I wanted to show FX that I could do a lot with money. And there's a helicopter. There's 20 limousines. There's which was a huge expense. There's no company in New York that has 20 limousines. We had to pull together and harmonize like 5 limo companies because they all had to be beautiful limousines. We didn't want any like Carmel car cracked windows.
This is for the bus scene?
This is the scene where
the school bus?
Yeah, I get all the kids in the school bus. And we had a fucking school bus that hit the fucking, we had to create this moment where it gets a fucking flat tire in a school bus is a huge production undertaking.
Yeah.
But so I wanted them to really see that, Jesus Christ, this is really a show. It's not just a bunch of, alt comedy kids acting awkward on a street corner.
Yeah.
And that the show continues to do stuff like that, throwing the bottle out the window and destroying a car. I love doing stuff like that.
That moment, that's one of those moments where not unlike the Last Mile in America, where I'm like, that comes out of nowhere but makes complete sense.
Yeah,
like,
it's exactly what needed to happen.
Yeah.
And it's hard to defend moments like that when you're producing them.
Right.
Because Blair Briard, who's she's the executive producer of the show, and she's the person who makes everything happen.
Yeah.
She's the most enabling and incredible producer I've ever known. She produced Pootie Tang. That's where we met.
Yeah.
She was like, do we have to? I mean, it's such a stupid, silly thing. But she kept saying to me, I just want you to be aware that the bottle on the window thing, you can do it, but it's causing huge problems. The building doesn't want us to throw it out the window. It's a permit problem. It may be a safety issue, and the cost is enormous. And the effects people said it can't be done the way you want it to be seen. They said you're going to have to get a zip line and a bunch of squibs and blow up the car. And I just kept saying it has to be. She said, does it have to be that? Can you come up with something? Because it's not an important plot point.
It's the most important thing.
To me, that's the thing, is to defend absurdity in production when it's expensive is you just have to go. You have to have the credibility to say, I'm very sorry. And also because I know production and I know technical shit.
Yeah.
I solved all those problems because I know how to do it, so I come up with ways.
But the absurdity injected in those moments where a guy makes a decision like that, where he hasn't done drugs a lot and he's in this situation that's clearly chaotic, it's outside of his life experience. How is that scene going to culminate in any other way other than a moment where you're like, this is beyond anything I understand.
It had to be. It had to be. It was really important. No, and one way that we do that stuff, it's all brass tacks. Logistics. The great thing about
after the vision, you have a vision, then how do you make the vision?
Blair needs to believe me that it's important, and then it starts happening. And like the helicopter, I said to her, "Can you get me a helicopter?" Like that was one of the first things I said to her when I got the pilot.
Yeah,
I said, "I got a pilot. I want you to produce it. Start working on a helicopter right now, an affordable helicopter." And we shot all this stuff, and she would once in a while report to me, I'm not finding a helicopter yet. Start thinking of an alternate. And I'd say to her, there isn't an alternate. Get a helicopter. And she'd keep working on it. And then she found this dude who was doing, he's a new helicopter guy.
Yeah.
He's the new guy in town. There used to be one helicopter guy. Yeah. This guy's new. He's competitive. He wants to get in the business.
Yeah.
And he had one day. She kept trying to drive his price down. It's fucking tens of thousands of dollars for helicopters.
Right.
She kept driving his price down. She couldn't get it low enough. And then one day, but because she bothered him enough and kept being tenacious, one day he said, look, I'm doing something for Comedy Central for some other show. I got to gas up and go anyway. I can give you an hour. So on his way to something else, he shot our thing. And we got it for fucking dirt cheap because she has relationships with all these people. That's why I knew I could do this show, because I had Blair and because I had Paul, because Paul can pull together natural light, a few other lights, and he can work with really I do everything the hardest possible way. There's no zoom lenses on my show. They're all fixed focal lenses, which means you have to change the lens at almost every shot.
Right.
It's an enormous amount of work.
Right.
And I knew that Paul could do it. I knew that Amy can take a restaurant and make it into 4 restaurants.
Right.
That kind of shit. So,
well, the amazing thing is that you do these things that are founded in your absurd vision and reveal your personal life, and then also sometimes you choose to do a narrative about bullies, which is very heartfelt, and the relationship with your kids, and even with Pamela, who you've worked with before in the park. That that what you're creating is a real human struggle and real deep comedy, and it's completely honest to your vision, and you can do whatever you want with it. And I think that people are really taking to it, and it's successful. And the people that get it and are willing to ride it, I think you're changing the tone of how television can be made. And I'm very proud of you, and I'm excited for your success.
Thank you, man.
And it's great to see you.
Yeah, you too.
And I'm glad we had this talk.
Yeah, it's when you know somebody for a long time, it's a very valuable thing.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I mean, we were best friends for a long time.
I know.
Long time.
I know. Well,
it's hard. There's times where it's hard to be your friend's friend.
I know, but I don't have them. I don't. It's not like I have new friends.
It's not like I was replaced by anybody.
No.
That would feel worse.
No, I'm still the same guy in a lot of ways.
Well, look, I give you, and you don't have to put this in the podcast if you don't want to, but what I would say, as far as trying to stay friends with somebody that you have a hard time thinking about what they're doing against what you're doing, is focus on them needing a friend.
Yeah.
It takes a good friend to stay with you in hard times.
Yeah.
It takes a good friend to stay with you in good times. Everybody needs support. Yeah. Everybody does.
Yeah.
So you're letting me down. If you see me doing something and you have a hard time coming to terms with it because you're feeling about your own life, what's really happening is you're letting me down as a friend. You're being a shitty friend by being jealous.
Okay.
So think about the other person. Well, think about what they might need.
But like in my
I could have used you. I got divorced. I got a show canceled. I had some tough times. I could have used a friend.
But you didn't.
During those times that were making you jealous, I was struggling. I was having a hard time. But doing the Louis show was really hard. Trying to keep my family together was hard.
But the thing is that in the way our friendship always operated, it was not that I was kept up to date in the day-to-day things. It wasn't a day-to-day call that we had. But it seemed that most of the time, the thing that made our friendship so deep and so strong was that when we did talk, we made each other feel better.
No, it's true. But you shut me out. You shut me out because you were having a hard time.
Okay. Well, I apologize again.
Well, I apologize to you because I did it to you probably out of resentment.
All right,
ignored your emails because you ignored my phone calls back when there was no email.
Can we get back on track or what?
Yeah, I think we can.
Because you understand me, and not a lot of people do. And the one thing that, and even when I tell stories about it, it's just that you always, are able to, even in your weird way, and even if I thought you weren't listening, even when you did pick up what I was saying, that you were able to, give me a great deal of relief, fairly quickly, and I miss that.
Well, we understand each other's flaws very well because we share some, and we've known each other long enough to understand them. So that's why we're able to look at each other, tell each other about moments that we don't want to tell anybody else.
Yeah.
And to be able to have the other person go, yeah, I get it, instead of going, oh my God, why did you do that? Or
the only time I did that,
well, don't be stupid, do this instead, or whatever. That happens.
And the only time I said, oh my God, was when I realized that I had missed, so much of your life, and I felt horrible about it.
What's funny is I did the same thing when you got divorced the first time. I got mad at you.
Yeah.
And I know now why, because I was married, and I didn't want you to get out.
Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, because being divorced, it has changed my relationship. why would I know? No.
I didn't prepare you for that. I'm putting you in the position to celebrate me and my success for a few minutes. This is the 700th episode.
You keep having to say it both ways.
Well,
is that proper to say it's the 700th episode?
Sure, I think it is. Yeah. And I'm excited you're here, but it was a surprise coincidence. And
yeah, well,
thank you. Well, maybe
congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me say that before you say thank you.
No, I thought I would set it up like this. If I go I really appreciate you coming and doing my 700th episode. That means a lot to me. I'm glad you were able to make time, like it was planned.
Right. Listen, I'm very proud of you. You've done. I don't think you can do anything 700 times unless it's working.
No,
you know what I mean.
Well.
Do you think there's 700 of anything that was just
shitty?
Shit? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, plenty of thousands, trillions of
most things.
Yes, that's right. Boy, you fell down those stairs fast. Yeah, I am very proud of you because
Thank you, man.
This is a very meaningful thing that you do. I mean, you've had a lot of really important things going on in this garage.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And now
big deal things. The president.
Yeah. Was there?
You know, Robin Williams.
I was at his house. That one.
Yeah, but I mean.
Yeah.
By your
podcast.
Okay. All right.
What?
I'm trying to say something nice here.
No, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's great.
I made some. Thank you.
Great. Keith Richards.
Yeah. Al Lubell.
Al Lubell. Did you really do Al Lubell? See, that is a great thing.
It's the greatest.
The people that you've brought together under one thing. It's really something, man.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. They've all done it. They've all.
Yeah.
You know, it's weird. I actually had some notes that I left inside. Hold on.
Okay. He's actually leaving.
Weird shit on the mic when I'm not there.
He just left the garage. I'm alone in the garage. He left. He's in his house. And okay, I'll play his song, I guess. Okay.
I remember when you played guitar publicly. I can't talk today. At the Montreal Comedy Festival. I'm really fucked up. My brain's fucked up. You remember you did Cunty McShitballs?
That's right. Cunty McShitballs.
And I was like, what? Wait, why is and everyone loved it.
It's the only time I ever played guitar on stage, I think.
And I witnessed it.
Yeah, people went crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
And you brought your guitar to do it. I remember. No?
I did?
Is that possible?
No, I wouldn't have taken my guitar to
that was the night in Montreal where Bob and Dave did the farting Gary thing, wasn't it?
Farting Gary. Yeah, everybody was there.
Yeah.
Dom Herrera was the host.
Right. And it was amazing. And I think you just made up that song, right?
Yes.
It was like the Ballad of Cunty McShitballs.
That's right.
And everyone thought it was amazing.
Yeah, whatever, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it was kind of... No, it was... I remember feeling really high after. Really
happy. Because you sang and played guitar.
Yeah, right? That feels good no matter what happened. Yeah, the bit was that I went on and I wore a suit.
Right.
And I did the jokes I had then that were very sort of Seinfeldian, 5 minutes on Letterman, clean jokes.
Right. Yeah.
And I was doing good, but we had planned this thing, so I had people planted around the audience. I remember one of them was Ginny Garofalo.
Yeah.
And as I'm doing my jokes that are landing solidly, people start yelling out, "Cunty!"
Oh, that's right.
Cunty!
That's right. Yeah.
And I'm like ignoring it. People once, "Cunty! Cunty!" And then I get upset. I go, "Listen, I used to have this stage name, Cunty McShitballs.
Right.
And I used to come out and play the guitar and do a whole character, and it used... But I want to be a mainstream comedian now. I want to... I want to be clean and be on Letterman. I don't want to be trapped in this thing anymore. And they're just chanting, "Cunty, Cunty." And then even the audience who didn't know about it started chanting it.
Yeah.
And then I rip off the suit and I'm wearing this black T-shirt and somebody hands me a guitar.
Right.
And I sang this song, "My Name is Cunty McShitballs."
Right. That's so... Remember when no one knew who you were? You could do things.
I could do
You
stuff
could do
like
secret things.
Yeah.
But you did. You actually did that with the Horace and Pete. Now here's the deal with that.
Yeah.
For me.
Okay.
because you came in here and we had a long conversation about Horace and Pete, and I was sworn to secrecy.
We sat in this
for an
exact
hour.
spot with even the microphones in front of our mouths without tape
and you were
rolling.
like, you're not taping, right? You're not taping. And you told me the entire process with excitement.
Yeah.
And you didn't know what was going to happen.
That's right.
And then you were like, you can't say anything to anybody.
Right. It was a big secret.
And you didn't record this, right? Right.
And
then like a day later, you're like, nah, we fucking should have recorded
for
it. later.
Yeah.
For any time.
Yeah, didn't have to play it
Top
right away.
secret.
So dumb.
But it was, I was excited for you, and I got excited, and I watched your first episode, and then I kind of slacked, and I knew you were coming today, so I watched them all, and I watched them pretty much back to back. Like, I guess I binge watched them. I was locked in, and at the end, I did not feel great.
No, I can't imagine you would, yeah. It's not an uplifting show. It's a down pushing show.
It's the opposite.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of uplifting.
Yeah.
But what struck me, and I imagine what struck a lot of people, it was so relentless and bleak in a way. But because people, I imagine, ask you, like, is it a comedy? There's no way you can say it's a comedy. It's a tragedy. It's structurally a tragedy, right?
Yeah, that's actually a very good observation, because a lot of people say it's either comedy or drama, but no, there's tragedies. The other one. Those are the two masks there.
Right. And it's structured that way.
It's a tragedy.
Without spoiling the end.
Well, because there's hope. And hope is that there's no tragedy without hope.
Right.
So, yes, it's tragedy.
But let's I know you went on Stern, and right now you're going to be doing a tour to promote it.
Yeah.
So it only went out to the people on your mailing list. And then and the only people who, like, I retweeted, I talked about it on here. So it was a secret thing.
That's right. Especially at the outset, yeah.
But the plan was always to do what you're doing now, which is you're now like, it's out, it's finished, I'm going to promote it.
That's right.
So the questions I have about it, like, I don't want to rush, or like, I have a lot on my mind.
Yeah.
Because I've known you a while.
Yeah.
And my first reaction when I heard that you were on Stern, you said you got into debt, and it was like millions of dollars, and everybody was like, Jesus, Louis, millions of dollars in debt. I'm saying, I thought, and I've said this to people, this behavior is not unusual for Louis. The amount is different.
That's right. Because I've always
this is how he creates. He needs to wipe the slate clean and be in complete financial fear, and then he'll do something amazing. It was a plan.
That's right.
Right? But that's just a higher money amount.
Bigger money amounts, and also, I figured that I wanted to play with my own money here. I didn't want to mess around with other people's money, because the things I was doing were going to be very extreme, Not only the way the story was going to be told, but the way I was going to release it. Everything I did was counterintuitive.
And why would you want to involve anyone in that conversation?
Yeah, I don't want to have to convince anybody of anything or risk their money when I know that I was taking a deep risk.
Well, the thing, because you had not really, said it, you just put your other show on hiatus.
That's right.
And I imagine you had to have a conversation with Fox about this.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And what did you say to them?
Okay, so like I told John Landgraf at FX that I was going to stop doing Louis in May, I think it was, late May, and I just told him that I didn't know I would ever make another one, and that I might, but I needed it to be okay if I never do.
Yeah.
I didn't want to owe it anymore.
Right.
And it was a hard thing for him to hear.
Yeah.
And it was unexpected. I had told him I was going to do at least 7 seasons. Like, I kind of promised him that.
Yeah.
I'm only saying kind of because I'm ashamed at how much I'd really promised it. But anyway, I told him I just creatively, that's where I'm at, and he respected it.
Right.
And then we made we renewed my overall deal there to make other TV shows, like Baskets, Pamela's show, these other shows.
What's that going to be called?
Better Things.
Yeah.
In the fall, it'll be on. They're producing it now. It's being made now. So I renewed that deal, and he gave me a big bump and more, a better deal this second time around to make. So I figured, okay, I'm going to stop doing Louis. I'll work on these other shows for FX.
Yeah.
And see what else comes to me, know?
Yeah.
So I did that, and then the summer happened, and I really cleared my head.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you about this sort of why I made the show, but you asked one question, so I'll get to that. Once I decided I was making this show,
Horace and Pete. How realized was it in your head?
When I talked to them about it?
Well, no, just in general. So you had that conversation, but you did not have Horace and Pete?
I had no Horace and Pete in my head.
Right.
I figured I'm not going to do anything for a while.
Right.
And then I'm having my summer, and then I started thinking about what can I do for FX? Like, I want to make something for them.
Yeah.
I started thinking of show ideas in general.
Yeah.
One of them I thought of was Albert Brooks and me doing the
animation thing.
show,
yeah.
And we're working on that. And then I started thinking about just shows I like and things. And I watched a thing called Abigail's Party.
Yeah.
Abigail's Party you can watch on YouTube. It's like the only place to see it now.
Yeah.
Michael Lee, the filmmaker from
Genius.
England. Amazing filmmaker.
Oh, yeah.
Largely an improvisational filmmaker.
Is that true?
Well, a lot of his movies that are like real, like Secrets and
Lies, and there's so many that were so good,
incredible movies. Even Mr. Turner, the more recent one that nobody gave a shit about.
Naked.
Naked.
Oh my God.
So he was a playwright in the 70s. It's like he had this whole other great career as a playwright in the 70s where he wrote plays. That's writing.
Right.
He wrote a play called Abigail's Party.
Uh-huh.
And all it is about 4 people in the suburbs of London or wherever in England.
Yeah.
They're neighbors.
Yeah.
They don't know each other, and they have drinks.
Yeah.
2 hours
Yeah.
of one scene. 4 people
and you
having
watched
drinks.
a production of the play?
Well, what it is they did a TV version of the play, and this was 1973. So it looked like All in the Family, any show that was shooting back then, Maude or something.
Right, but not unusual for British. I mean, they did a lot of theater.
They did stuff like that.
I think they did Pinter stuff. Right, yeah, Playhouse 90 or whatever it was.
Right, and but so it looked like a sitcom in that it was shot in multi-camera. You could tell there was somebody live switching the cameras.
Right.
And you have 4 characters talking.
Audience?
No audience. That was the thing, and it was funny.
Right.
I was laughing out loud, and there's silence.
Yeah.
But it's not silence. It's like it's a sound stage. There's a living feeling to it, and it's performed, and you feel that you've seen a whole performance that never changed.
You utilize that a lot in Horace and Pete.
That's right. So when I watched that, I was like, this doesn't exist in the American TV diet. It doesn't exist anywhere
anymore.
No, but here's the thing. Even Playhouse 90, the way that was produced was they'd take a play, like a known play,
right?
You know, Eugene O'Neill or something or whatever. They'd take a known play, and they would rehearse it for whatever, probably weeks and weeks, and hash it out the way that they take a play and they dissect it, whatever they do. I've never been part of that process, but I know it takes a long time.
Sure.
But to me, the idea was, what if you made a series? What if you made 10 episodes of something like this that has a hybrid? So it's episodic like television.
Right.
But the medium feels like a play. And yet also like a sitcom because it'll look robust the way a sitcom, multi-cameras, a decent set. I started thinking of this, right? After I watched Abigail's Party, and I just started turning on like my whole body. I got so fucking excited.
Now, had you had conversations with theater people? Had you met Annie Baker at this point?
I hadn't met Annie Baker. What happened was I think
you just emailed her.
I saw the play.
The flick or the other one?
The flick.
Yeah.
The only one of hers I ever saw. And then you told me you had her on your podcast. Right. And I was like, oh, I saw that play. That's a great play. And I thought I should reach out to her because I want to learn something from a playwright about this thing.
Sure.
But I think I was already working on it at the time. I don't remember where I was. I don't know where I was in the process. But anyway, I started thinking. I knew what I wanted it to feel like.
Yeah.
And I knew the idea of something that looks like a sitcom, the way a sitcom feels theatrical.
Right.
But with no laugh track.
Right.
That already, a sitcom with no laugh track, I was like, dang, I want to see that.
And also not the expectation to be funny. And not to write joke to joke.
That's right. And then also taking from Abigail's Party 2 hours of talking, riveting, because you're really staying... single camera movies, they move on the cuts. They move on a big music cue.
Yeah.
Or camera movement.
Right.
Or the ability to jump in time and space, which is something you weirdly take for granted in movies.
Well, not unlike your show.
Right.
Blue.
On my show, you're talking to a guy, you're watching a guy talk, and then within the same second, you're seeing something in another time and place.
Right.
That's what moves single camera.
Yeah.
Is the editing and the cinematography.
Mm-hmm.
In stage plays or in multi-camera world,
no time jumps.
No,
really.
You move on the dialogue and on on a moment, a person's mood shifting in front of you, in front of the audience.
Yeah,
someone saying something to somebody else and that changing. A piece of news being revealed. a person entering the room. And also something accumulating, penting up for a long time.
Yeah.
I never played with this kind of shit before.
Right.
I never did it before, and I got so excited by it. And yeah, when I saw the flick, I remember nothing happens in the flick. It's three people that work in a movie theater.
One set.
And they just talk.
Right. With
about
big
life.
Pauses.
And sometimes about each other, long pauses.
She writes them in.
The pauses.
If you look at her script, she has a glossary of pauses.
That's amazing.
Like what they mean in the script, how long each one should be. I think there's 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, she was doing something that I had never seen before, and I took my 14-year-old daughter to see the flick.
Yeah.
And she's 14, and she watched. It's like 4 hours long.
It's a few hours, yeah. 2.5 maybe.
I think it gets up to 3.
Okay, maybe, yeah.
So why did I say 4? But it's okay. About 3 something. My 14-year-old daughter loved it. I mean, she's a bright kid, but even then, so
that means something.
Yeah, it does. And so, okay, so anyway, I started thinking about this thing, and I'm like, well, what's it about, you know? And my buddy Dino Stamatopoulos was over, and he and I had talked about doing a show in a bar someday, and I thought, like, a bar is a good idea for a sitcom.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's been done.
Right.
And then I thought, well, I want this thing to be a bar and a home. 2 sets.
Yeah.
And I wanted them to be connected so that you could walk from one to the other without cutting the camera. Because my first thought was we never cut. We never go. It's a 1-scene episode every time. That was my first idea, which I abandoned.
Right. After like 3.
Yeah, no, there's none that are not 1 scene. Really. Episode 3 is 1 scene. That's the only one that's 1 scene.
Right.
So anyway... then I thought, well, why would there be an apartment above a business? Well, because it's a family business. They live upstairs, they work downstairs.
Yeah.
So that's how I got to family business. And then somehow the names Horace and Pete just came
out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. I thought, who am I? I'm not me. I don't want to play me. I wasn't even sure I was going to be in it.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking about things like I could do an episode that's 3 hours long.
Sure.
I could do an episode that's 10 minutes long.
Right.
I could do whatever I want, not on television, not on FX. I started testing this idea against everything that I'm required to do for FX, what their needs are, which are not, those are their needs.
Right.
The ad breaks.
Yeah.
Forget it. And you can't do it.
Intermissions whenever you want.
Right. But on this show, if I had to do an ad break every 5 ad breaks, forget it. Having one episode that's an hour and another one that's 30 minutes, big problem.
Right.
Not as big on FX as than anywhere else, but still a problem.
Right.
The language, cunt, nigger. I mean, I just knew I was going to fly around.
Yeah.
So I thought, and also then the main thing. I didn't want to promote this show, and I didn't want to give the audience a big head start. I didn't want them to smell it before they got to it.
No expectations.
No
knowledge
at all. No knowledge or expectations.
Right.
That, forget it on FX. Forget it. So I look, and I realize, well, in my overall deal, I've got an out. I can do something on my website. It's the one place I can do something else.
Right.
But that's because they think it's going to be a stand-up special or, a cooking show with me and my mom. I mean, what would I do?
Right.
And at the time...
It's a website. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I started to conceive this, I thought, this will be little.
Yeah.
And then I thought about a TV studio that I worked at for my show. I shot these David Lynch episodes in a TV set that's in the Penn Hotel in New York City.
Oh, when he was the network,
the late night
guru guy. Yeah.
So I remembered that studio, and I thought we could shoot there. And I went a little crazy. I called my producer Blair Briard, and I said, "Find out if the Penn Hotel is available for January." And she said, "Okay." She called back and she said, "It is, but we're going to have to put. If you want it, you got to put a deposit down. Whatever it was, $200,000."
Yeah.
I'm like, do it. Just put the money down now. I didn't have anything written. I didn't know who's in the show. Nothing. I said, grab the studio. But here's the thing.
You wanted incentive.
I'm smart because it was incentive. But since I took the studio, about 5 different productions offered us money to walk away from it because studio space is rare in New York City.
Right.
So I could have just speculated and made a profit on that money. They would have paid the rent and given me like $50,000 just to walk away from it. But as it turned out, we wanted the studio. Okay. So... then Steve Buscemi called me.
Yeah.
We're friends.
Out of nowhere?
He and I did a benefit together for the mayor, this Made in New York thing. And he was a firefighter, and he is very active in 9/11 charities.
Yeah.
So I asked Steve one day, hey, if you ever give me an opportunity to help,
Yeah.
So he called me and said, hey, we're doing this thing for the firefighters if you want to do it. And I said, sure. And then he said, how you doing? And we'd never really chatted. I'm like, oh, I'm all right. What are you doing? Boardwalk Empire's over. Just sitting around. I'm like, oh, well, I'm doing all right. I'm writing something. We hung up.
Yeah.
And then I called him immediately back. I said, hey, do you want to be on a TV show with me?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, maybe. And I said, meet me in New York tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I drove into New York.
Yeah.
He came into the city from upstate.
Yeah. Were you out on the island?
I was out on the island.
Yeah.
And I said, I had the names Horace and Pete in my head.
That's all you had?
Yeah. And he said, and I knew it was a bar,
Yeah.
and it was a family bar. It was starting to come together.
Yeah.
And I said, I think maybe you're my brother.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, I like that. Sounds good.
Yeah.
He said, I want to do this. I explained to him what I was at, and I was like, it's for my website. I'm going to do it very cheaply. I'm not going to tell anybody about it.
Yeah.
I said, if you get another project, you can just tell me you can't do it.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, I want to do it. And I said, if you want to have any ideas, you can tell me what they are. Let's just try to start doing this. So he said, okay. And then I thought, we're Horace and Pete. And once I saw him and me as brothers, the lineage of the bar came to me really fast. I was like, it's a bar called Horace and Pete's.
Yeah.
And it's always been in the family. I like that idea.
Yeah.
But if we're Horace and Pete, why is the bar called Horace and... Well, because it was always called that. Generations of Horaces and Petes. I like that idea so much.
So that's all you got so far.
So I got the ideas, and I kind of know what I know what I want it to be. And then, I saw a picture of Edie Falco in a magazine. Just like one of those close-up of her whole face, taking up the whole page. Edie Falco has stopped. Nurse Jackie is over. Like Boardwalk Empire's over. HBO's #1 drama guy just stopped, and I got him now.
Yeah.
I've got him.
Yeah.
Edie Falco, Nurse Jackie, Showtime's #1 comedy.
Yeah.
Just ended.
Yeah.
She says in the interview, I love episodic television. It's my favorite thing. Yeah. I don't like movies. I like TV.
Yeah.
And I'm not looking for new work. I'm going to see what happens. And they asked her, would you ever be in a comedy? And she said, no, because comedies don't run deep enough. And I looked at her face in the magazine and I said, you're going to be on my show. I said it out loud like a psycho. And so then I wrote her I started writing. There's always the big test is, does it right?
Yeah.
I've had a million ideas and I sit down and nothing comes. So I sat down and I wrote the first episode and I got this. Oh, the other idea was Joe.
Does it right.
Does it right. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
So I thought about the other idea I had loosely years ago was Joe Pesci should be in a sitcom. That was another idea I had. Joe Pesci should have a sitcom.
And you met him, right?
Well, this is before I'd never met him.
Right.
And so I created the character for him being Uncle Pete.
Yeah.
And then I thought Jessica Lange, I sit next to her a lot at award shows, so I like Jessica Lange. So I mentioned her
just coincidentally.
Yeah, well, because we're both FX people. She was on Horror Hotel. So I told Steve Buscemi, "What about Jessica Lange?" He's like, "Yeah, I like her. She's great."
Yeah.
I thought about Adie Bryant because when I'm on SNL, she's my favorite cast member. They're all great, but she's great. So I just sit down and I put all these people in this bar. And I open the bar in my head.
Figure out who they are. You don't really know who they are yet.
I know that we're brothers. I know that she's our sister. I know he's our uncle.
Okay.
I know who everybody is.
Yeah.
And I just open the bar in the morning.
Yeah.
And I just start writing what happens. And I just have us saying just shit to each other. I talked to Steve about his character.
Yeah.
We had approached the idea that he's a guy who needs medication.
Uh-huh.
And that he's riding that line and it's painful for him. And without it, he's in a violent place. And so I start writing and the voices are very fucking real to me. And the place feels very real to me. And I just, it got really intense really quickly.
Yeah.
And Uncle Pete comes in and he's hilarious to me. And I'm just writing and writing. And then Sylvia walks in. It's like it was happening and I was like a stenographer just taking down notes, you know. And the first episode just was a very, I don't know how to describe it. It was like an eruption, you know?
Right.
And I finished it, and I was like, God damn, I really love this.
And you grounded everybody. The first episode, the characters are deep. They're three-dimensional.
Yeah.
And they live in the place.
That's right.
It all happens that first episode.
That's
the other
right.
characters come in, but I think the sister, the daughter, the brother, the uncle, and you... primarily.
That's right.
You're dug in. Kurt's there and Steve Wright's there, but they're Kurt and Stephen Wright. Nick. Yeah, he's Nick. Mm-hmm. A little less than Nick.
That's right. And I thought, well, there's a lot of things happening in this episode that don't feel like good first episode of a TV show ideas. Like everybody starts really yelling at each other, and there's a very intimate.
This is why you're writing.
Yeah, this is a very intimate and private conversation,
right?
And a fight inside of a family.
Yeah,
and if you don't know these people, this family, it's asking a lot of people to watch them in this kind of conflict
immediately.
Yeah, I'm not saying a lot in the way of introduction about each person. Mm-hmm. And every time I thought of something like that, I thought that this is what happened in this show for me. This feels real, and it's okay. And I've got 10 episodes to explain everything. And if people need to be told and fed everything right away, they'll go away, and that's okay with me.
Right.
This feels right.
Right.
And so I just kept writing. And at the end of the first episode, I thought I didn't explain Horace at all. I really got Pete. Well, Horace didn't do anything. And I thought to myself, I have a feeling Horace is never going to do anything.
And this is your character.
My character. And I thought, when I thought of my character, I thought I did the thing of playing a divorced dad who's really showing up for his kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's your phrase, too, because when I had kids, you said to me, you're doing great, because I'd had kids for a while.
Right.
And I said, yeah, I'm a dad. And you said, yeah, but not all of us thought you were going to show up for this. And I realized that showing up is like an active. For a man, showing up as a father is an act.
It's a choice.
Yeah, for a woman, it's a default. I mean, that's culturally, speaking. But so I thought I played that guy who showed up for the kids and stayed in divorce. And I want to play a guy who makes terrible choices and is a mess. Somebody who's distant from his children, who blew it with his kids.
And also, the one thing I noticed throughout this whole thing, knowing you for as long as I have, is that, holy shit, this is unique. Louis listening a lot.
That's right. I also wanted to sit and listen to people.
Right.
I wanted to be somebody that people listen to.
And I don't mean that as an insult, but but it's not that's not your natural way.
It's not. That's right. You're right.
And you were challenging yourself.
Yeah. So I wrote the first one, and I thought, damn it, this is important and good, and this is definitely what I'm doing next. But
you didn't ask yourself for meaning. You didn't require that from what you were creating, because when you do something that's 10 episodes, it's how you explained it as being inspired by theater, that all makes sense, and your intentions all make sense.
Right.
But I assume that you wrote this not unlike other things. You let it happen.
That's the way
and did not interrogate it afterwards.
Well, afterwards, yeah, but not during.
Right.
Because I don't write things like this with intention to tell people an idea.
Right.
Because I feel this, so I'm going to disguise it in a story.
Right.
Often when I write something, I look at it after and go, man, it taught me something, or I learned something from it. Or not taught, but it made me reflect.
Right. How many episodes did you write before you started the casting?
Well, so I had written Steve. Steve was in.
Mm-hmm.
I had started to try to get Joe Pesci to do it. I went to his house.
You did?
Yeah, I went to his house in New Jersey.
Now you're at a level now where people are like, you're a guy.
I can get folks on the phone. Yeah.
Yeah. So you go to Joe Pesci's house.
I went to Joe Pesci's house, and
that must have been great.
It was one of the greatest things ever. Yeah, it was really great. And by the time I wrote, I think I'd written 2.
And this is for Uncle Pete.
Uncle Pete.
Yeah.
I'd written 2.
Yeah.
And I started to know where the show was headed.
Yeah.
And I started to know everyone's backstory. I'd started to understand the family. I really knew them. And yeah, I didn't have this sense of I want to say this about people.
Right.
I did tell myself before I started writing, something I want to think about when I write this show is that there's a tension inside of everybody between the safety of being alone and wanting to be with other people. That when the closer you get to other people, you get a warmth of community.
Yeah.
But you get scared.
Yeah.
Because they can hurt you.
Right.
Or you can hurt them and let them down. Which is just sometimes worse.
And sometimes you don't have control over either of those things.
You never do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then but the safety of aloneness is despair. It's very sad.
Yeah.
So I always feel myself moving to the person, away from them, move to the or towards myself, away from myself, towards myself. And that there's something interesting about that, and that a family is that, because a family you have no fucking choice.
Right.
And a bar and a family are the two opposite sides of that spectrum. You are fused to your family. But a bar is a way to be around other people where you're not with them. You don't owe them anything.
Yeah.
And I started going.
It's also an escape.
Yeah, that's right. That's from your own actual life. Yeah.
And also, like, it's a place where intelligence and things get compromised. You're serving people liquor. So
that's right.
So naturally, there's the slippery slope of what's revealed and why people are there and all that stuff. And
that's right.
Some of that you don't even have to speak to, and I don't necessarily think you did, but most of the people you covered.
Yeah. So I started thinking about stuff like that. I started going to bars.
Yeah.
To see what it's like during the day drinkers. Like at 1 PM, I'd go to a bar. I went to McSorley's in 7th Street, which was really interesting because that's been in the same family since the 1800s. And so I learned a little bit about that if I talked to them.
Right, and the convict actually, in the later episode, had worked at what was McSorley's.
Yeah, probably, right?
Right.
So most bars I found, they just have the music on and nobody can hear each other. This conversation
at night?
of people talking to each other during the day, they just have the fucking music on so that people can talk privately and no one can hear each other.
Right.
And that was kind of disappointing. I couldn't really eavesdrop on anybody because everybody was,
But you could feel it.
I could feel what it was like. And also sometimes somebody's at a bar and there's people with them that they're strangers.
Yeah.
And they'll go like, my dad raped me and, now I work in finance, and people just kind of shrug, because it's anonymous. It's not Alcoholics Anonymous; it's Alcoholic Anonymous.
Yeah,
you know what
it's
I mean?
active, like it's bar behavior.
Yeah,
that happens.
Yeah. So I got interested in that idea, and then I thought of this thing of like, hey, if we make the show every week, we could throw it up really. If we do this multi-camera, if we can learn how to make a good line cut that you can live with. We could throw the show up like the week we did it and talk about, there's about to be an election year. I had no idea what kind of an election year we were headed for.
Right.
When I was writing it, I didn't know what the fuck this was going to be.
Yeah.
Anyway, so all this was scrambling around in my head, and I wrote a second episode.
Yeah.
And now I'm just walking around thinking about Horace and Pete all the time. And every time I finish writing, I'm very emotionally wrought. Like it was affecting me.
Yeah.
And I just knew I had to do it. And then I went to the Emmys in September.
Yeah.
And Edie Falco had a seat open next to her. She was sitting there with the seat open next to her. So I just sat down next to Edie. And I said, hey, we've met just hello a couple of times.
Right.
I said, I'm writing a TV show. I want you to be in it. It's me and Steve Buscemi. And she said, sure. Like, like, please go away. Like, I was freaking her out a little, I think. I said, well, how can I get you to read it? And I said, I don't want to talk to your agent. I don't want to tell anybody it exists. It's a secret. And I'm not going to ask you to promote anything on the show. I just want you to do it. And she said, okay, well, she gave me her address where her mailbox is. Yeah. And when I got home from so then I turned around and there's Jessica Lange standing there.
Yeah.
And I asked her the same thing, and Jessica was like, yeah, I'll look at it, sure.
Yeah.
Everybody was down.
Yeah.
And then when I got home, I gave I made an envelope with the scripts, just like the old days, you know?
Yeah.
Put my phone number in it and wrote her a letter. Dropped it at her mailbox place. Said, this is for Edie. She said, just tell them it's for Edie.
Yeah.
Gave it to her. Gave it to them. 2 days later, I got a text that said, hi, this is Edie. I'm in. When do we start? She's just like, I want to do it. Yeah. And I was like, really? She said, yes,
you
absolutely.
Sent her 2 scripts.
2 scripts. She was like, I'm doing this. And then I had lunch at Cafe Reggio with Jessica Lange.
Yeah.
And she said, well, I hope you do more with her, the character, but I'll do it.
Right.
Because I'd only written a little bit for her. So now I've got Jessica Lange and Edie Falco
and Steve Buscemi.
Totally committed, although just verbally.
Yeah.
To do the show. And then Joe Pesci passed. And
what was it like hanging out with him?
Joe was, he's a very raw human being.
Yeah.
He gave me a cigarette.
Yeah.
And he goes, don't ever let anybody tell you these are bad for you. That's a fucking lie. He really thinks it's a lie that cigarettes are bad for you. And, I spent time with his family, and he takes care of them. He's a caretaker kind of a guy, but he's also fiercely protective of his privacy. He doesn't like being famous.
Yeah.
And he's a good guy. I mean, all I know is my time with him. I had a great time at his house. He's really hosted me nicely. Gave me a lot of advice, very paternal advice. Talked to me about the character at length of Uncle Pete. And has eventually passed and said, you can have everything I've said to you.
Did it help you?
Yes, there's a huge monologue in this show by Alan Alda, who plays the part I had written for him, that is, Joe said that to me about going down on a woman about oral sex. And I just couldn't believe it. When he said it, I was like, Joe, that's going to be in the show. And he goes, yeah, you can have it. And I sent him, after he said no, I still sent him a couple of scripts, and he would call me and he'd go like, listen, you fuck. Like he called me one day, you dummy, you're going to write Archie Bunker again? This fucking character has no depth. He's a fucking idiot, and it's been done. So are you going to listen to me? I'm like, yes, Joe, tell me what's wrong with Uncle Pete. And he'd tell me stuff, and I learned from him. It was great. Anyway.
So how many people do you go out to before you get Alda? How'd that work?
Okay, after Joe, I went to Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson.
Just because you felt like it?
I met him at Lorne Michaels' house.
Yeah.
And Lorne's been very nice to me over the years. And
Did he know about this project?
Yeah, he did. He begged me to get financing from somebody. But I said I can't. He was like, no one's going to congratulate you for paying for it. No one. And I was like, I know. I just don't want to have to talk anybody into the shit I'm doing.
Yeah.
And he's like, they'll just give you money. There's people who just give you money. I'm like, I don't want to do it. He's like, all right. But so I asked him for Jack Nicholson's phone number, and he said no, but I'll pass something on to him. So he gave him the scripts.
Yeah.
And Jack called me and said no. But
when you got that
I
call?
get personal no's now. That's where I'm at.
Right, but your phone rings.
My phone rings,
hello?
and this woman says, I'm looking for Louis C.K. I said, who's this? I'm calling for Jack Nicholson. If it's not you, I'm hanging up now, or something like crazy like that. And I was like, yes, it's me. So Jack comes on and he just says, I just wanted you to know the writing is terrific, but I'm not going to do it. And I was like, oh, well, can I convince you? He's like, you know what I did today? I went out to the tree in my yard and I sat under it and I read a book. And when I was done, I went back inside. And I was like, all right, it was nice talking to you. But anyway, we chatted for a while. But he said no. And then I thought of Christopher Walken.
Right.
And his agent is also Edie Falco's agent.
Yeah.
And Edie's agent had been sworn to secrecy. I'm really impressed, by the way, with all the agents of everybody. These are all Hollywood agents. None of them told anybody about the show.
Yeah.
So Edie's agent, Tony Howard, gave the script to Chris Walken, who said that he really liked it, but that he thought it was too easy for a guy like him to play this part.
Right.
He's done guys like this.
Yeah.
He said, tell Louis, why don't you get somebody who you would never expect to do this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I could see that. And she said, how about Alan Alda? Said Tony Howard. And I said, I don't think so. She said, why? And I said, I think Alan is the greatest.
Yeah.
But he's not right for this. And she said, well, meet him or let him read it with you. I go, I'm not going to do that to Alan Alda. I either hire Alan Alda or I leave him alone.
Yeah.
She said, Alan loves to work. And I'll give him the script. Just let him read it.
So she's doing an agent's job.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he read it. And he wrote me an email. And he said, I really love the material. I'd love to talk to you about it. And if it's not right for me or I'm not right for it, I'd love to find that out as quickly as possible.
Right.
But let's talk.
Yeah.
So he came over to my house.
Yeah.
And he's a great guy.
Yeah.
And he's really serious and into his work. He's a real artist.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to see Uncle Pete in him.
Yeah.
I was like, so how would you play it? He's like, I don't think about it that way. I don't intellectualize it. I just start doing it. Like he wouldn't tip his hand.
Right.
And I was like, fuck. How's this guy Alan Alda gonna go? Cox is niggas and piss ants. Like what?
Yeah.
No, it's not him.
Alan Alda's not that
I'm
guy.
like, he's not that guy at all. It could be a huge mistake.
Yeah.
But then I'm looking at him. I'm like, Alan Alda's in my house.
Yeah.
I love every single thing he's done.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
And he wants this.
Yeah.
So I said, let's just do it. And he went, really? I said, yeah, I want you to do it. He said, are you sure? I said, yes.
Yeah.
And he left. And then Tony called me and said, Alan's concerned. He says you gave him the part, but he doesn't think you really want him to do it. I said, I want him to do it. And so, anyway, I'm talking too much, but I had all the big four.
Yeah.
Steve, Edie, Jessica Lange, and Alan. Had him cast.
But you hadn't done a read-through.
At this point, I had read four. I had killed Uncle Pete. I hate to give a spoiler, but I'll do this one just to tell the story.
Yeah.
I killed him in episode 4 so that Pesci would do it because he said 10 episodes was too much.
Yeah.
And after Pesci walked away, I was like, 4 actually makes sense for him. This makes sense for the character. This character being such a looming figure and then dying is a huge, great thing to do to Who's Left.
Right. Nice void.
Yeah. Voids are fucking great for tragedy and drama.
Yeah.
So, and then Alan was going to Australia right after episode 4. We already had it scheduled at this point. So it worked out. Okay. So now... I realize, and meanwhile, the FX deal that I've been putting together, where I'm about to sign it, it's final. They're being really nice to me.
Yeah.
Generous amount of money, really decent terms.
Yeah.
And I realize this is not a little webisode series.
Yeah. You've got 4 major actors.
4 huge actors. One of their Emmy Award-winning actresses, Jessica Lange. And that's not on FX. Yeah. And I'm about to sign this deal, and I'm in it.
Yeah.
And I just walked off of the air on FX.
And you got to tell them.
I was like, this is fucked up. I legally don't have to tell them, but there's no way.
You want to have that tension.
I can't do it.
Yeah.
And it was so, I mean, my stomach lining is just, I'm just shitting it out. And I'm like, I got to have this conversation. I had it many times in my head.
Yeah.
And I thought, God damn it. There's no good version of this. Yeah. You know, at one point you start trying to say, how can I say this? And then you go, this is no good way to say it.
Right.
Because I have to make the fucking show.
Right.
And I have to make it this way.
Yeah.
And I have to make it. I'm not telling anybody.
Right.
This is all the only way to do it. So I called John Landgraf. And I said, I said, listen, man. I said, I'm about to sign this deal with you and make it final.
Yeah.
I need you to know about this before I sign the deal. I didn't ask him, can I do this show? I said, I'm making this show.
Yeah.
But you need to know it before we sign the deal. Yeah. And I realize that this is really disruptive, but it's creatively what I believe in.
Uh-huh.
So I don't have a choice, and I want it. I want to do this. So whatever you do with the deal, I really want to make those shows for you on the network, but I'll understand whatever you want to do with the deal is I'll understand.
Yeah.
I hope you decide to sign the deal.
Yeah.
But I can't have you sign it without knowing about this.
Yeah.
So he said, well, this is a lot you need to give me some time to digest this.
But you didn't tell him about the show.
Oh, no, he asked me what's the show about.
Yeah.
Because I think he wanted to know that I wasn't doing just Louis on my own network.
Right.
And I told him it's about a bar and 2 brothers that own a bar. And that was satisfying to him that it wasn't the same ground.
Yeah.
And he said, all right, let me think about this. And then he called me like a few days later and he said, walk me through deciding not to do Louis and then deciding to do this. Like, just take me through. And I told him basically the story I just told you.
Yeah.
And he said, I don't want to get in your way, and I like the work we do together. So it's fine. And I was very glad that I did that.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I'm writing, and I've got more cast together, and we get the studio. We start talking about what the bar looks like.
Yeah.
The more and further I went into it, and I'm telling John Landgraf now everything. Like I told him I'm killing Uncle Pete. I'm telling him all this stuff. And after a while, I see him chuckling and going like, listen, man, I'm so glad you're not doing this on my, like, it just was like, why would he want to be taken for this ride?
Right.
But, and eventually he said to me, not only am I supportive of this, I'm rooting for it.
Yeah.
I love, and he was just into that I was doing things this way.
Yeah.
So, okay. Annie Baker, I called her, I wrote her an email.
Yeah.
And said, I really love your play, and I thought maybe I want help writing this.
Because
I want to write this with somebody. Yeah. And I also thought I'm doing this as a collaboration on stage. Maybe I could collaborate when I'm writing it.
Right.
So I wrote her and I said, do you maybe want to work on this thing with me? And she was in Iceland. She wrote back and said, hey, I'm a fan of your work, and let's meet. So we met. I gave her the first 3 scripts. No, the first 2.
Yeah.
And she loved them. And she said, this is really great. And I said, well, will you write on it with me? Like, be a writer on the show. And she said, I don't know if I can do that. And she went away a bit and thought about if she could write. And she came back and said, I don't think I can do that, like write for you on your show.
Right.
And I said, I'm glad because I don't think I could let you write on my show. I don't think anybody else could write it. Yeah. I said, can you just come to my house sometimes and sit with me? I have the way that I use help as a writer, have somebody sit on my couch and just be there to talk to.
Who do you use? Like Vernon?
Vernon Chapman. Stephen Wright did it on my series Louis.
Yeah.
Pamela has done that for me. Pamela Adlon.
Yeah.
on this thing, I didn't have anybody. Vernon I had. Vernon was helping me. That's that way. But so Annie's great contribution to the show was that after 2 episodes, I decided I want to do an episode where 2 people talk for the whole episode.
Yeah.
And you never walk away.
And at this point, most of them are around 30 to 40 minute long.
The first one was 65 minutes. The second one was 45.
Right.
So I wanted to do one where it's 2 people talking. And my first idea was it was 2 people in the bar that aren't connected to the characters. Just like 2 patrons of the bar talk for 30 minutes, episode 3.
Right.
And Annie and I talked about it. And she said, I think it needs to be people on the show. But maybe you introduce a new character.
Yeah.
And so I started thinking of that. And then I thought of this woman who I met at the Emmys also.
Yeah.
Who's a brilliant actress. I don't want to say her name. And I thought she could maybe do it. And she likes me. So and I thought, what if I think of something for her? So I came up with this idea, this area. And I started telling Annie Baker this idea.
The ex-wife.
The ex-wife.
Yeah.
And this thing about a confession and people sharing culpability and, you know. And we both were like, this is really fucking exciting. And it was through dialogue with Annie of talking about it and describing to her the area I wanted to go into and her saying, yes, you got to do that. You got to do that. And Annie said very early on, I feel like this starts with a shot of this woman who's a new character and you don't know who she is. Yeah. And you don't know who she's talking to. And you also don't, even though you know the actress, it takes a minute to identify her. Oh, definitely. Because she's, dressed down. Well, that's an interesting thing because the original actress is somebody you would have gone, boom, you would have known who that is. Right. It literally through the entire episode, which was really one of the best performances ever anywhere, in my recollection. I think that's true. I do too. And I'm like, is that Laurie Metcalf? Is it her? I don't even know if it's her. Who is that? Is it a New York actress? I could not identify her. That's right. For almost the whole thing until I saw the credits. That's right. And when you watch that thing, I know that I see that other people have responded in similar ways than I have. You're like, what the fuck? Mm-hmm. You can't even explain that performance, where it came from. But the detail that you gave her to work with was insanely nuanced. Well, the place I had gotten to with this, so what Annie and I talked about was the idea of an a divorced couple that have a lot of distance. Yeah. Their kids are growing up. They have no reason to talk anymore. Right. And that one of them I always had this idea in my head that Horace did something terrible to break up the family. Yeah. Just awful. Right. And that she's the victim of that. Yeah. So she is now in her later life doing something terrible in her new family. And also significantly older than you. So the backstory of you unfolds. Which came because the actress who I wrote it for was older than me. Yeah. And I thought, well, that's interesting to me. That Horace is younger than his wife. And that's not a reason, but it's part of what went into his not handling the marriage and being a father. Right. He was a young father. Right. And so that idea, and I was like, when I started setting that up, I thought she comes to him to ask him how to handle doing a terrible thing because he did one to her. I thought, that's fucking huge. And that's where Annie and I were at. And I thought, I know where this is going generally. Now I'm just going to go write it. Send her away. It's the last time I saw Annie on the project because until we shot the thing months later because she had something going on in her life, I couldn't get her again after that. So I sat down. And she had given me this thought of the woman's face, and you don't know who she's talking to. And I thought, okay, let's let her talk for a while. And so I started telling the story. And this is what it was like to write this show. I sat down and I started telling the story through her voice. Yeah. Of where they were at, this house, and what it was like, and why they went there. It comes out of nowhere. You don't know why she's telling the story. You don't know anything. You don't know a single thing. If you're watching in order, you're just like, what's happening? The power of this show to me and the way I wanted to do it, and especially once I started writing it, how vital it was that it be a secret was because of the episodes like this where it was like, you won't know why you're looking at this person. You won't know how long you're likely to look at them. You don't know who they're talking to. You don't know how many episodes this show is. You don't know what this show is. It's only 2 episodes deep into it. You don't know why you're watching it. I knew that people would call, like we had to, when I first put the show in the air, huge amounts of press called my publicist, who honestly said, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, because I didn't tell him it existed. I wanted him to be credibly ignorant. He knew no idea. Okay, so
right? You mean when you dropped it?
When I first dropped it. Right. So if you're a person watching this, you're just like, you saw one and you're like, I don't know what.
Did you send him a nice bottle of wine or something?
He's great. He handled it very well.
Okay.
And then the second episode, you go, okay, I guess there's a rhythm.
Yeah, I guess it's episodic.
The first one's like its own thing.
Yeah.
The first one is like its own play.
Yeah.
And then the second one is like, I guess we're going to watch these people for a while.
Yeah.
It's kind of a holding pattern episode.
Yeah.
Then the third one, you go, who the fuck is this? She's been talking for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I don't know who she's talking to. And I'm getting a boner from her story. And she looks really upset and nervous. I don't know why. All these things. The stirring up questions in somebody's head, exciting all their fucking brain with wonder and confusion. These are great feelings to feel from a TV show.
Yeah.
They don't exist because they want to land you safely in every single moment.
Right,
you know?
right.
So this was a great opportunity for that. So she's talking. I'm writing it, and I'm up on pins and needles because I'm watching the scene as I'm writing it.
Not for Lori.
No, not for Lori, for somebody else. But I'm in my head thinking about this thing that she's laying there and that he drives up.
Yeah.
And that she spreads her legs open, and that was an act. She didn't spread them for him. She spread them for her own luxury of aloneness. And that here he comes, and now what do I close them? Here comes this man, this old man, and I'm letting him look. And do I open my eyes? And every single little detail of that was freaking me out as I wrote.
The brush on the wall, dude.
What's that?
The paintbrush.
Yeah, the paint. I mean,
that was like
I lived all these moments as I was writing them. The paintbrush, and she's like trying to touch herself, and I'm like, and I mean, I was getting hard while I was writing it, and then I finally get to where Horace goes, why are you telling me this? And then the tension breaks, and she goes, well, you know, I never thought about what you went through during that time. And Horace is like, what the fuck? This is a funny way to bring this shit up. We never talked about it. We just broke up, you know?
Yeah.
And then I thought, go to the bathroom, Horace. Just go to the bathroom. Everybody calm down for a minute. And that's where I started putting intermissions in the show. So,
right.
Intermission.
Yeah.
Come back. All right. So, he starts telling her the real truth.
Right, and you're filling in all this backstory
about Horace, who you've been watching.
Right, and that's how you fill it out, by listening,
That's right.
and then by addressing it. But even all of your stuff is relatively minimal in terms of your vocal engagement.
Yeah, I don't say very much at all.
Right, but you cry, you react, you listen. You know, and in the episode where you play your own father, that is a completely different set of challenges as an actor.
Yeah.
And also, like, what I always wonder about something this expansive is, are you considering the psychology of these characters? Like, when you look at Horace as an adult, do you know, from the get-go, do you believe he had an abusive childhood, or is that something you discover?
Well, I think that there was an abuser, was the head of the household.
Right.
And that was the cycle of the family. And, I mean, I grew up with a dad who hit everybody. He just hit everybody.
Yeah.
And that's what a family was like when I was growing up. And the mother hit just out of desperation.
Right.
And the kids had strange relationships of trying to sort of comfort each other and stay away from each other and stuff like that. So I knew that was a backdrop. I knew that that's part of what drove these kids apart. Mm-hmm. And that's part of what drove Horace and Pete together.
But even the detail of the Pete character's childhood with the glasses and the filling of the glasses.
Yeah.
Where the fuck did that come from?
Okay, so
like that you're establishing that he had mental problems early on that had not.
It was a big deal to me that Pete had a mental that he had a disorder.
Yeah.
And I gave that a lot of thought. I talked to a guy who works in a doctor of abnormal psychology, to ask to just run some of this shit by him.
Yeah.
And he checked most of it. He said the stuff that you have, there's some that's accurate, and the stuff that's inaccurate is in the right ballpark and borrowing from other types of, you know what I mean? Like he said, it all makes sense.
Right.
So, Pete, to me, that thing of Pete having this madness that he fights against, and that his nature is that he's just a good guy.
Yeah.
He's a caring guy. He's courageous.
Yeah.
he's vain, you know. When he says to his date, I know the left side of my face is handsome. You know, he's got a good heart and strong confidence as a person, but he keeps getting shattered by this fucking madness inside of him. And that's a really hard, terrible thing. It's just a bad toss of the dice.
Yeah.
And I don't think most people end up beating it in the end.
Right.
And I kind of knew right away when I was writing this, I think this shit's going to take Pete. I don't think Pete's going to make it. On some level, he's not going to make it.
Yeah.
And that was really hard because I really got I got so involved in these things. Every time I wrote an episode, I tried not to make phone calls or talk to anybody because I would start talking like the characters and stuff like that. But anyway, but about the glasses. So, when I wrote the last 2 episodes, I wrote the first 8. I just wrote them on a schedule, one after the other, because it was just coming out of me. Then I got to episodes 9 and 10, and I knew what they were going to be. I knew what was going to happen in the end. And when I wrote episode 8, where Pete gets some bad news, I sent it. I gave the cast the scripts as soon as I wrote them,
because they had to shoot next week.
No, this is before I wrote them all ahead of time.
Oh, okay.
So this is like in October.
And now knowing you and knowing the stuff that you've taken chances on previous and some of it not being made, how impulsive was it? How much editing was there when you did a draft?
Well, I would write. I don't do a lot of rewriting in my life at all. But I thought I gave a lot of forethought. I thought very carefully about these things before I wrote them.
Yeah.
I worked harder on these scripts than I've worked on anything in my life.
Yeah.
I wrote the first 8, and then I sat down and thought out 9 and 10.
Yeah.
And when I wrote 8 and Pete gets this bad news, I gave it to Buscemi, who wrote me, and he said, or I think he called me, and he said, look, I don't have high hopes for Pete after reading this. And he said, it doesn't seem like he's got much of a chance in life. And after we killed Uncle Pete, anything could happen.
Right.
And I just want you to know that that's okay with me. Because at this point, I thought, we're on season 1. This is season 1.
And this is also the guy that made Trees Lounge.
That's right. This
is his wheelhouse.
This is a guy who's done, he's got an incredible body of work.
Yeah.
So he said that, and I thought, I don't know. Because it was hard to think of, like, I don't want to take this part away from Steve. I don't want to take his character into this terrible place. Because I'm hiring all these people. They're all taking a chance on me. Edie and Steve and Jessica and Alan they're giving me the first quarter of their year, which is a lot from actors of that caliber. And I thought, I want to do this show for years. That's what I originally thought. But every time I took a big dramatic or tragic turn in the show, I thought the only thing that keeps you from doing that in a sitcom or any series is that you need to stay within the margins on a series so that the show stays the same, so it can stay on the air.
Right.
The decision to not make big moves on a television show is an economic decision to make more product. But as a writer, you just want to be able to say, I don't give a fuck what happens to anybody as long as it's important, as long as it works in the writing.
Yeah.
So I thought about 9 and 10, and I was like, oh fuck, I know how this ends. I know what happens at the end.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it. I don't want this to end like that. I don't want it to, but I have a feeling it's gonna happen. So I stopped writing at 8. I said, I'm not going to write 9 and 10.
Yeah.
I want to start making the show and see if I can come up with a better 9 and 10 that gives the show a longer life and gives the characters a better outcome. So we started making the show, and once in a while I'd go back to 9 and 10, and it just kept.
So you're shooting week to week. You're knocking them out in a week.
So I've been having people come to my house. The whole cast, they come to my house and they read.
Yeah.
The big 4.
Yeah.
And then people like Mark Normand, Lisa Traeger, who's just a comic who started at the Cellar recently.
Yeah.
I liked them, so I had them come to read the parts at the bar. Lisa, I didn't know if I was going to put on the show. I was like, could you come and read one line, but read a bunch of other characters? Lisa Traeger. She's a comic. I like her.
Right.
Michelle Wolf, really funny, strong comic, funny voice. Come on and read this part, and Tom Noonan, who I'd used in my other show.
Great actor.
Fucking great actor. Got him involved. Stephen Wright, Kurt Metzger. So I started, but I didn't tell them what they're doing. I said, just come to my house on Monday.
And then out of nowhere, we get Burt Young.
Yeah, exactly, Burt Young. So they all come and they sit down at my table and we all read. And over the whole fall, I read this episodes again and again, read them as much as I could. I had this thing in my head from All That Jazz. the movie, where he's running a dance again and again, and he's like bent over at the waist with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. He watches them pour their hearts out, and then he just goes, do it again, do it again. And I thought, I got to be that good on this. And I did it to myself on the scripts. I'd read through them, do changes, cut little things, make it better, make it better, make it better. I said, this has to be fucking great. So I worked like that. And then now it's time, when it gets to be January, we've worked really hard. We haven't made anything. We haven't made a single fucking thing. And I try to figure out this workflow. How do we make this show? How do we actually do this? How do we deliver the show on a weekly basis? Obviously, I'd left spots, like a lot of dialogue at the bar was like TBA, because I wanted to see what happened in the news. And we would run that. Like Tuesday, I figured we'd figure out what we're going to talk about in terms of current events. So that's generally what I did. So
that would run through Kurt and...
That's right. So we've got 4 cameras and a control room. And I'm the director, and I'm used to directing myself, but I need a live switch. I need the cameras to be switching from one to the other in a way that we're going to be able to use on the air. So we start rehearsing it, and every time I'm looking over at the cameras. Every time somebody talks, all the cameras come over to that person. And then another person talks, and they all go over there. It was fucking madness. And we're not Saturday Night Live people. I mean, they know what they're doing. We don't know how to do it. So I sat in the control room the first week, and I sent the cast home and replaced them all with stand-ins, and ran the scenes with stand-ins. And there was these highlighters sitting on. I'm sharing this because I want to open source the show, because anybody who wants to do this should be able to do it. There were these highlighters on the counter of the control room, all colors. So I had 4 highlighters, one for each camera. And what I did was I colored the dialogue on the script with the color of the camera that should be covering that dialogue. And I walked through the show. And every time that a camera's position switches, like next to the dialogue, I wrote, single on Edie. So that's what camera 1's assignment is. And then the next time you see camera 1, if that assignment is changed, you go 3-shot Edie, Steve,
You created a system.
That's right. And I invented one. And I had so many times during making this show where I thought, it can't be done. The first week, I was like, we can't do this. No one can make a show this fast of this breadth. We can't do it. But we figured it out. And after the first one, we realized we all know how to do this now. So
working with real pros.
Oh, and I mean, the actors fucking forget.
And when did you, like, whatever skeptical feelings you had about Alan?
Oh, yeah. So Alan, the first time we read the first 2 scripts, I took a bunch of fucks out. Because I thought he's not going to be able to say these things.
Because Alan Alda.
Alan Alda. And, he came with a whole other guy, and he read it, and I was like, I had pins and needles in my body as he read it. And then we read episode 2, which I hadn't edited, and he said fuck and cocksucker and all this stuff, and I was like, this guy's incredible. This guy's like, and he was wearing these big glasses, and I was like, God, I hate this guy so much. I hate him, because we were reading, a lot of the scenes are me and him, and he's being mean to me, and I'm like, fuck, I hate Uncle Pete. And I couldn't believe it. And I said to Alan one day, I'm not going to talk to you about this character or anything. Just do what you know what you're doing. So, let's just enjoy ourselves. And that's the way it went. I never had to talk to him about it. I had very few. You always want to be able to help a little. And direction is a good beacon for people. So I was able to tell Alan sometimes, like, here's a way to go with it. And he would always be grateful for that. But he invented that fucking character. It's not what I had in my head. It was something a billion times better. And he just, every time he showed up, it was better and better. And the week of the show, when he walks in, and, the whole thing I had with music and stuff was about turn on the jukebox in the beginning, let the show feel like, you're watching the show, right? You don't know what it is. You just got an email from me. This is this show. You put it on. I don't know what the fuck this is. These 2 guys are dancing. They look like idiots. Stephen Wright walks in, puts his own napkin down and gets a drink. It's just dead. They're sitting there drinking coffee. Nothing's going on. What is this shit? And then somebody walks in and puts music on the jukebox. And now it's getting lively. Okay, the place is filling up. Okay, so this is going to be a show about a bar, and it's going to always have music coming out of that jukebox. It's going to be live. They're talking about football. And then this guy walks in and unplugs the jukebox. And it plays dies. It just it dies, and then it's dead till he dies. I mean, it's dead like that. And for most of the series, it's dead.
Yeah.
So that's who Alan was. He was this joy killer, you know? And at the same time, I knew there was a time where he really made the bar sing. He made it great, you know? He tells the baseball story about Horace. And it's like this thing. He used to be able to tell stories like nothing and make people laugh. Story. It's terrible. It's so vicious.
But, you know, you were able to service a lot of the things that, you know, you struggle with and are important to you. Cultural conversations about race, about gender, about sexuality, about politics, you know, about the bleakness of life, about how life changes and how people change. I mean, all that stuff is there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, in looking at the span of it, you know, you were able to use Amy Sedaris in almost an angelic way.
She was an angel.
Right.
And I didn't know that. I didn't know she was going to be that.
Oh, you didn't?
No, but, and I feel like I didn't service the question you asked me about the glasses, because I was taking too long to get there.
It was just a detail.
But okay, so when I was ready I realized I have to write 9 and 10 now because there's no escape from 9 and 10. They are what they are. I realized that 10 didn't have a lot of content. It wasn't actually very much. I just knew what happens at the end. And then I thought, what if we go back to 1976 in Horace and Pete's? 2016, 1916 when the bar was open, and now let's go to 1976, somewhere in the middle.
Bicentennial quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought, what if we go to the day they left? What if we go to the day that Horace and Sylvia were taken away and Pete was left behind? Which is sort of what informs the whole story.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, and then
you're playing your father, Edie, your sister's playing your mother.
She's playing my mother, and Pete's going to play Uncle Pete as a young man.
Great job on that, he did.
He was amazing. So, and then I thought, then when you get a whole new set of bar patrons, and this time it's fuller and it's more alive. Like in 76, it was fun. It's not fun anymore.
Right.
That's what I wanted to
Active
sort of
conversation, not threatening, not foreboding, not malignant.
Immediately I knew George Wallace.
Yeah.
And then I thought about Colin.
Yeah, Colin was great.
And I met with Colin, and he told me about 2 hours of stories of New York in 1976 when he lived in Brooklyn at that time. It was great because he said to me, your bar was on Court Street.
Yeah.
Like he put my bar, he said it was on Court Street near the municipal buildings downtown. And he told me all about having a girlfriend in Trump Village in 1976. And so I extracted all this shit from Colin. Credit to him because he told me great stories like the one he tells about gang members chasing each other. And I wrote his character. And then I thought about David Blaine, who'd I run into once in a while.
Yeah.
Like I doing a magic trick and freaking out Uncle Pete.
Right.
And then I thought there should be also an old guy like we had. And then I thought about Burt Young. And I asked my agent, just call Burt Young's agent and tell him we have this. You just sit in a stool and you'll say some shit. I don't want to send him a script. And he said yes. Burt Young, you know, his guy's name is Horace, and my guy's name is Horace. So he memorized the script and he thought all my lines were his lines.
Oh,
which was fine.
Yeah,
because sometimes we both say something at the same time, which is funny.
Yeah,
and also he was better than there's a bunch of my lines. Most of the things that he says,
old Horace,
were my lines. I just let him have them.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so the abuse.
Yeah.
And the glasses.
Yeah.
So I'm playing this guy who abuses everybody in his family.
Yeah.
And I've never done that.
Yeah.
And I don't know how someone does it.
Yeah.
And every time I would sit alone, I'd make sure no one was looking, and I'd read the lines out loud, and I couldn't do it.
Hurt.
Well, I thought I'm not this guy. It was just I couldn't authentically go like, you know, what are you doing?
Right.
Like, what am I going to try to sound like I'm from Brooklyn?
Right.
What are you doing?
Well, you got a little Boston in there, though.
Yeah, a little bit. And so then I thought I might have to replace me.
Yeah.
And that's weird if I'm the only one not playing the older guy.
Right.
So then Edie comes to the set one day and we just look at it. She goes, can I ask you about the 76 stuff? And I said, yeah. She was great at talking about the material. So I said, let's read it out loud. So now I'm looking at Edie, who I've been working now with for 8 weeks, who I've gotten a tremendous amount of respect and affection for, who I really love and I believe is my sister from all the time of playing the parts. Mm-hmm. And now I look at her, she's my wife. It's easy to feel that way.
Yeah.
I love her. I trust her.
Right.
And it's easy to be mean to her.
Right.
I just go, what are you doing? You know, you fucking liar.
Yeah.
It was easy.
Yeah.
Because I trusted her. And I realized that's what abusive people do.
Yeah.
They just go, she loves me. She loves me.
Fuck her.
fucking whore.
Yeah.
It was so easy. It was horrible. Grabbing her. But I remember when we were rehearsing and I was dragging her by the back of the hair through the bar, I was saying to everybody, I'm dragging a national treasure by the back of her head. I felt terrible. But in filming it, it was easy to do.
It's brutal.
Yes, it is. So then this kid, I thought, Pete's going crazy. He's just going crazy at 13.
He has no control over it. Mental problem.
That's right. He gets a thing in his head, he can't get rid of it. So I thought of these two details. One is that he ripped the faces out of some pictures and then hid them. And the other is that he gets told by somebody he's got to fill every glass with water in the house before the sun comes up.
That was just a device you came up with.
That's all. And then there was this thing, the way the kid did it, of
He's very good. Yeah.
And he's laying the glasses out in rows.
Yeah.
That kid was so goddamn good.
Yeah.
I walk up to him and all I said to him was, when I take my glasses off, you're going to get hit.
Yeah.
Because we did versions where I did a stage slap.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
Yeah.
So I take off my glasses and the way he stops, it's horrible.
And then you cut away and just hear no.
Yeah, you just hear slapping and no.
Yeah.
So, okay. Anyway, when we did that and we did the last episode, I got really wrecked by it. It was really hard.
Well, you could see you getting wrecked throughout it.
Yeah.
That, it started
really
to
hard.
chip away at you.
That's right.
So, like, for me, in my experience of it, and it's got nothing to do with who me and you are, but, like, as seeing it as a piece, it seems like you did some, like a version of the great American tragedy. That you created this masterpiece of what feels like theater. And then you sort of redefine the parameters of television. But I think that does a disservice to what you did in a way. That you shot it, so beautifully and so specifically that the experience is theater. That the space and, you let things sit. And this is not stuff that I know for you is easy. It's not easy for you to listen. It's not easy for you to cry. It's not easy for you to be abusive. And so the challenges for yourself were huge.
Well, they were, and the listening is the big one, because I didn't make myself cry in any of these scenes. It's not written when she's telling Horace about her son, about his son, who doesn't speak to him.
Yeah.
It's not written that he cries. There's no reaction written. It's just her lines. And when she said them, I just bawled. I couldn't control it.
Yeah.
And on every take, we do have 3 takes, but I really lost it when she's telling me about my son and how he's happy.
And wait, what about Laurie Metcalf? Were you just astounded?
So the woman who I wrote it for couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I started thinking of people, and Laurie Metcalf's name kept coming up. And I knew that she was a great actress.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure it was her. And then I saw a piece from her show called Getting On.
Yeah.
And I saw her do this. I don't remember what the scene was about, but it was just great.
Yeah.
And I was like, why didn't I? She's perfect. There's nobody else that can do it. And then I got panicked because I thought, now I'm probably not going to get her. Because now that I know it's her, I'm not going to be able to get her.
Yeah.
This is way back in October before we started shooting. And so, I don't remember exactly when, but so somebody got her the script. I emailed her. I tried to get it to everybody personally because I didn't want anybody to fucking know about the show. So I wrote her and said, please don't tell anybody about this. Please read it and please do it.
Yeah.
We can do it on a Monday. She was in a play.
Yeah.
So she wrote me back and said, I'm already memorizing it. Mm. And I said, great. I'm so excited. And I never spoke to her again. Never met her. She just took the part.
Yeah.
And then that was it for that. Then episode 3, because episode 3 was just me and her talking. So there was nothing to do.
Yeah.
There was no logistics to it.
So, but you had no experience previous to the scene of what she was going to do with it.
No idea. No idea.
So were you just sitting there going, what?
Yeah. So episode 1, episode 2, and putting the show out, absorbing the reaction from the show, all of the freakish life of all of that.
Yeah.
Now it's time for episode 3. And I'm like, fuck. I got to do episode 3 now. That's Laurie. That's right. Laurie's doing it. Fuck. I hope this is good. I don't know. I never talked to her.
Yeah.
Probably should have brought her in a few times. So she came the Friday before we shot it. We shot it on Monday. She came in on the Friday before, and she sat down and she read it with me. And I thought, Jesus motherfucking Christ.
Yeah.
This is really huge.
Yeah.
This is a huge thing. and I didn't know it because I hadn't looked at the script.
Yeah.
I don't know the lines.
Right.
And she needs me to just catch and throw and toss back.
Yeah.
That's all I have to do, and I'm not ready to do it.
Yeah.
And God damn it, I didn't know what this was. I forgot about it.
Yeah.
And when she read it, I was like, she's vulnerable. She's ashamed. She's turned on. She's scared. God damn it. And I thought, this is the biggest thing I ever did is just this one stupid dialogue. This is the most important thing I'll ever do.
Right.
And we're doing it on Monday. And I'm really tired.
Yeah.
And so over the weekend, I got as many people as I could get to come over and read with me. I don't prepare.
Yeah.
People came over and read it with me. I had to know it perfectly. I read it again
to be there for her.
Just for her.
Yeah.
I got nothing I have to do but not fuck her up. Because she needs to do this all of a piece.
Yeah.
And the hardest, talk about listening.
Yeah.
10 minutes of looking at an actor telling you a story where you're not on camera, where you're just trying not to derail them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I took all weekend, worked on it. And then on Monday, it was like a closed set, like when you do a sex scene.
Yeah.
That's what I told the crew.
Yeah.
No one unnecessary on set. Quiet. And I set up the shots and the sort of game of how to shoot it. And then she came in and then we sat down and it was dead quiet in that fucking place. Oh, Alan Alda coming in at the end. We had shot that already because he had left town.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we sat down and did it the first take. I figured we'll get a few takes in. First take, we kind of had it. I mean, she kind of nailed it on take one.
Yeah.
And I was like, God damn it, Lori. Okay, let's do one more. Second one is far better. And that's all we ever did at the first half of this episode is 2 takes. And then we did another one of the second half, the dialogue between me and her. And when she told me about my son being a good man and making good choices, I just felt so many things, and I couldn't hold it in. And that's when this show started to shift for me, because I was really getting involved emotionally as an actor without trying. I didn't have to go and think about sad things. I just opened up to these people.
Right. And that speaks a lot to, your experience with, your mother. And being there for your mother.
That's right.
And having 2 fucking sisters.
Three.
Yeah. Like the amount of emotional space and the sort of the gift of these characters to the women in this show is sort of mind-blowing. Like, it's a beautiful thing, but I think that comes a lot from stuff that you really haven't reckoned with publicly.
No, it's true.
Your relationship with women is complicated, and it goes back to when you were a nothing.
That's right.
A child.
That's right. It does, and I think that I was able to dig deep that way because it was about family.
Right.
And here I have this daughter on the show who, I thought about my daughters when I did Louis, but in this case, I thought about my sisters.
Right.
Because my family, my dad we don't have a relationship with him. I don't have one with him at all.
Yeah.
And so that's who Horace's son is really me.
Yeah.
I'm playing my dad a little bit,
right.
know? And then, but I have one sister who stays in touch with him.
Yeah.
And I hope I'm not divulging anything private, but I asked her once because she has a hard time with him.
Yeah.
But she stays in contact.
Uh-huh.
And I asked her once, why do you do that?
Yeah.
Why do you put yourself through it? Because I don't. She said, well, he's part of me. Your parents are part of you. And I feel like if I can accept him, not forgive or even like,
right,
but if I can accept him and be open to him in my life, that means I can accept and be open to parts of myself that I have a hard time with. And I thought, God damn it, that's such a strong choice. That's a brilliant thing to be able to do. I can't do it.
Yeah.
Willfully admit I can't do it.
Yeah.
I'd rather just avoid and shut down.
Right.
So that's who Adie is. She's really my older sister.
Right.
And that she just looked at, I'm going to tell you how I feel. If you want to be around me, you're going to have to listen to what I have to say.
Right.
But so that's who she was.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it was very intense. And after 3, we killed Uncle Pete, and him telling Pete about eating pussy as his last words was. all Joe Pesci's thing.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
he turned it into this thing. Joe Pesci started by telling me you don't eat pussy because it makes you into a schmuck, and even women that do it, he doesn't like them.
Yeah.
But then he says, but that's because love is you face each other and you come at the same time, and nothing is and nothing else is worth it.
Yeah.
Hold out for real love.
Yeah.
Joe Pesci said that to me.
Yeah.
And so for Uncle Pete to say that to him, don't ever do that, son. Don't ever eat a pussy. And then he shoots himself. And I'm sorry for the spoiler for whoever's listening.
But that's the only thing you really spoiled.
No, that's the one thing. But
the thing about it is like people's expectations of you and giving you the leeway to have this experience and put it out there is that the comedy of it, it services the tragedy.
Yeah,
it does not save it.
That's very well put.
And Kurt's great, Steven's great, Nick is great, but but even Kurt, who is probably the most comedic character.
He's also a lonely guy in the show too, though,
right?
I think.
No,
yeah.
I know, and he's very Kurt. Like I know Kurt.
Yeah.
But his energy, his exuberance, his joyful cynicism is about the funniest it gets.
That's it. That's really it. Yeah.
And it's dark.
It is.
But there's also one beat that you have, after the first encounter with the African American woman who you don't know, what she is.
Yeah.
When she leaves and you have that moment before you walk in the bedroom, I don't want to give it away because it's so clearly a comic moment.
Right. That's right.
After
she leaves?
Right. And Edie Falco comes in.
Yeah. So she, here's the thing with that one was a good case of where I felt the story was being told to me rather than me telling it.
Yeah.
Because the point of that to me was Horace hooking up with somebody. One night stand. And the one night stands in life that are very mutually
good.
Yeah, and also mutually negotiated. Yeah, everybody's cool with what's going on.
Right.
And that when she wakes up the next morning and goes and she's just like, I didn't mean to stay over. And Horace says, have some eggs. And she says, and then I'm leaving. And Horace says, yeah, please do. And then they're able to sit together because they both know no one's going to get snarled here.
Then you get into that conversation that you have, which I've never seen it played that way.
Well, because I thought what's interesting, once I got them sitting down, I didn't know what I was going to have them talk about, but I thought, here's an interesting thing. Two people who have been intimate, which means they can tell each other something.
Yeah.
But they have negotiated we are never going to see each other again.
Yeah.
Which means they can tell each other things without fear.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Right.
And I thought, Horace is a guy who, if you ask him 3 questions about his life, you find out something terrible.
Yeah.
That's a fucked up way to go through life.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hey, you got, just questions that are nobody, and they're eating eggs. They don't really even want to talk.
Yeah.
You got, are you married? No. Divorced. You have kids? Yep. 2. Yep. Really? How old are they? And then it all comes out.
Yeah.
You can't even answer that question for Horace without this horrible truth coming out.
Yeah.
And so he tells her, and to me, that's what the scene was about. It was about that. And then I started to figure, okay, well, then we'll start landing the scene by talking about sex and just that she enjoyed it, he enjoyed it. You have a nice dick. Thank you. You have a nice pussy. Thanks. It's right. I had to put in where my dick used to be. I had to make that joke.
Yeah.
It's just a joke.
Yeah.
And then I went, as Horace in my head, I was like, yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
And then the conversation took off from that. I didn't know the scene was going to be about that. I didn't intend to write that scene. I really didn't. And then once I started having that conversation with myself in my head, about halfway through, I talked to Vernon about it. And he said, well, wait a minute, though. If someone is transgender, they have to tell their partners. And I was like, really? They do? And then I thought, that's so interesting that he thinks that.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. So I had that out in the conversation.
Right.
But I got to give Vernon credit because when we shot that scene, it was intense.
Yeah.
And the last take we did, I thought we were done.
Yeah.
I was like, we did it. And then Karen Pittman, who played the woman, said, I'd love one more. And I said, you don't need one more. She said, I don't think I have it at all. And I said to her, I don't need you to feel satisfied like as an actor.
Yeah.
You gave it to me. She said, just let me do one more. I said, all right. So we did it. That's the one we used the last one.
Right.
That she wanted.
Yeah.
And it's far better than the one previous. So she gets credit for that. But right before we did it, there's something I've started to do in directing when I'm in the thing.
Yeah.
If you're doing a last take, it feels like a last take. Do something that the person didn't expect. Like walk towards them when you haven't for 5 takes, or go walk over and like put your hand on their shoulder. Something that makes them do something really honest.
Yeah.
But anyway, he got in my ear and said, "You should say this one thing." And he fed me that line right at the
Which one?
Right before the one you're talking about. The thing I say. Anyway.
Yeah, because it was like in the way you structured this show. Even if something's funny, you're not writing jokes. There's no, it's not.
No, there's none. It's all just mechanics of the story, and then it's these feelings. And I kept getting blindsided by feelings, like in that scene. So Edie wasn't supposed to be in that scene.
Yeah.
But there was this thing where she's got cancer.
Yeah.
And there's a timeline to her cancer.
Right.
And I'd been talking to Edie about that kind of stuff, and so I said to her,
is that the scene where she tells you she has cancer?
It's the scene where she tells me she's healthy, that she got a good card of,
Oh, that's right.
So I said to her the day before, hey, you know what? You're not supposed to be here tomorrow for the Karen Pittman scene, but come anyway. And come in at the end and tell me that you're cured.
Yeah.
And I just figured it's a story point.
Yeah.
And I'll go, hey, terrific.
Yeah.
So she said, okay, how do you want me to say it? I'm like, just however you would say that.
Yeah.
That you got good news.
Yeah.
And she goes, all right. So I forgot it. I I told her to.
Yeah.
I honestly forgot.
Yeah.
Until we're shooting the first. I think we didn't do any rehearsals of that. Because when we rehearsed the scene, I didn't have that in it.
Right.
So we're shooting the scene with Karen Pittman. And she's about to leave, and Edie walks in. And I forgot that I told Edie to be there.
Yeah.
And then it's like weird because she's there with this woman I was just with.
Yeah.
And then the Karen Pittman leaves, and I go to Edie, and she looks weird.
Yeah.
And I'm really in a real place.
Yeah.
And I said, what's up with you? And she says, I've got good news. And I go, what? She says, I'm okay. And it fucking hit me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
I never experienced something like this. She said this thing to me, and I was like, that's my sister. And I was afraid to even consider the possibility that she was dying.
Right.
And she's going to be okay. And now I'm upset that she was dying.
Yeah.
It hit me so hard. I mean, I'm getting emotional now.
Yeah.
I fucking lost it.
Yeah.
I just like, I started to cry. And then I wanted to hug her, and I thought, I can't. She's not like that. I can't do it.
Yeah.
Sylvia doesn't like to be hugged.
Right.
So I just kind of stood there, and she stood there kind of gasping.
Yeah.
And then we hugged awkwardly.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then that line that Vernon gave me was just perfect. It was perfect.
It was a pretty outstanding line.
Yeah, no, it was great. So that was another time I got really hit hard.
Well, I saw you going through it, but do you feel when you look at this thing, and outside of whatever the finances are, none of that's important to me. We because you're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
So when you look at this thing, do you feel like you've exercised something? It was a big deal.
But
can you identify what was this doing inside of you?
I don't know, man. I mean, I feel like it wasn't just me because we all shared this thing.
Right.
Every week we would sit down with a new script and we would talk about it, and then we'd run through it and we'd go, wow. Tuesday we would just burn through the script, like on the set. Just burn through it again and again. And then we slap on microphones like on our chests and let the cameras watch us do it so we could start to get a sense of how to shoot it. But
so you had a real community. You had a family.
Yeah, exactly. And I had...
it's theater.
And we're like working through it and starting with not knowing it and saying, what do I say? Like first we would do it on book. Everybody's staring down at the script. So we just are all hearing it. But no one's connecting because you're not looking at anybody. You're looking at a script. Then you put the scripts down and you read through it and you look at each other. But then you have these big moments, but then you see someone just die on camera because they forgot their lines. I mean, not on camera, but we go, what do I say here?
Yeah.
And then you get piecing through it. And then we go to lunch, then we come back, put the microphones on, and now everybody kind of starting to know it. And then we would talk about it and go like, wow, this one's really, I'd written them months before. So it was like I was discovering each one with the actors. And then I would be like, all these tracks in my head running at the same time because it's like Steve Buscemi walks in the room and he starts doing a scene and I'm like, I'm feeling all these things about my brother.
Yeah.
And I'm also thinking, God damn it, is this guy turning in a great fucking performance?
Yeah.
And how does he know all of his lines?
Yeah,
I don't know any of my lines. He so gives a shit about this crazy thing I wrote. And he loved it. Him and Edie
and Alan, all of them loved working on it. And they would tell me this over and over again, that they loved working on it. And then the show would go out, and the world would see it, the little world that was watching it.
Yeah.
And the way that people were expressing their appreciation, most of the people that write sort of like TV recaps were ignoring it. But a couple were recapping it, and I would read those.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of emails, and I was reading them. I don't read emails, but I was reading them because they were all very profound, and people were very upset by what they were watching and compelled by it. And I thought, this is really a fucking big, small and big.
Yeah.
And we just all knew we were doing, and the bar felt so real to me, that fucking bar that Amy Silver, our old friend from the bartender at the Paradise in the 80s.
Yeah, she designed it.
She built this bar that lived for us.
Yeah. And your guy Paul, was on.
Paul, my guy Paul Kessner, and a big thing that happened was the editor, because I always edited my own show, but I let her have it, and she really earned the job on episode 3, because she stayed on my face when she was telling me about my son, and I was crying. And when I saw the edit, she doesn't cut away from me once. It's a really long reaction shot. Yeah. And I was like, defend that. That's indulgent. And she said, I can't do it any other way. She said, you have to. She said every time I watch this, it makes me feel all these things, and when I cut to her, I don't feel them. Yeah. In this one thing. So I started this thing I do with an editor now, which is she does something I don't like, and instead of saying change it, I say, why'd you do it? And she tells me something, and I go, well, I hadn't thought of that, and I let her have it. Yeah. So she started shaping how the show feels, but never editing, never shoring up, never shortening moments. Only shifting around where the cameras are, because they're all in isolated record, and putting the pieces together. Jesus, Paul Simon making the song for me that made me cry every time I heard it.
And then he shows up in the last episode.
Yeah, he shows up in the last episode, and then the way we used America. Paul and I would become pals at that time, and he told me, he said the sound of silence. Yeah. Paul Simon said this to me on your show is really deafening. It's really hard to take. He said, put a little music in there, make it come out of the jukebox. Yeah. I said, well, I got to get that music somewhere. And he goes, well, why don't you use your favorite song? And he was being nice, because I had told him that America is my favorite song. And I said, can I have it? He said, of course you can have it. He gave me America. But yeah, and then when it came down to that, and when Pete had left for an episode and he was gone, there was this episode about Pete being gone. Yeah. I was such a mess that week, because I missed Steve, and I was scared for the character, and I was mad at myself for writing what I did about him.
So you're having this very real personal struggle with your creation while you're acting in it.
Yeah, so I don't know where it all came from, and I did something I never did as an actor, which is I resisted feeling anything. I was like, I don't want to feel this. It's too much. Yeah. Like, I really did. I was like, I don't care if the show's good or not. I can't let these feelings out. It's too much.
Well, the personal catharsis of you engaging this way, and having these.
Yeah, I'm sorry I keep going.
Very real experiences. No, it's great.
The thing that was important to me, and one thing about the way I did it, was I didn't want to have to tell people, like, I promise you this will be funny. I promise you this will be good even. I just wanted to lay it out there. But say, if you want to watch it, you can watch it.
But all these things you're talking about, the life of the show and the life that you lived in it, and these performances and this collaborative experience, and the courage of making it a tragedy definitively.
Yeah, it really is.
Is something that it's not been done. It's, for me, like, it's a weird thing that my experience is like, this should be 2 days of theater. Like, you should put this up.
Right.
On Broadway.
But that's the funny thing, is that this is exactly what it belongs as. It's just this 10-part thing that
I know watch. That. I know. But the theatricality of it. Yeah. To have that experience where you let these pauses happen, and you let these things be open-ended, you let these emotions happen, and you let these horrible people, some of them, have their time.
Well, like with the scene with Laurie, I thought that what I learned from writing that one was that you've got a big issue between two people with a lot of frayed ends to it, and a lot of conflict and a lot of hurt. And the two of them try to figure it out. And one person says, here's 4 ways to approach it that could help you. And the other person says, I can't do any of them, because I love too much, or I'm too scared. Right. And then the other person goes, well, then don't do any of it, and just keep doing it. Keep doing it. And the other person goes, yeah, I guess that's what I'm going to do. And kind of fuck you, but also how you doing, and then just walk away.
But you needed to unload.
I mean, that's a conversation.
Sure.
that's how people talk to each other. Once you've lived a lot of life, especially when you get in your 40s and 50s and beyond, you get to a point where it's like, we can exchange a few words, but we're not going to fix nothing.
Right.
It's all dug in.
Yeah.
And you never could have fixed it. All you can do is like chat for a few minutes with somebody who's sort of walked the same roads as you and compare notes.
I do it every week.
Yeah, exactly. And it can hurt real bad sometimes.
Yeah.
And I'm like in a weird place of mourning from this show.
Yeah.
I still, like you can see, I get like emotional about it, and I cry about the show a lot.
It's a relationship.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I miss it a lot, you know?
Yeah.
And I want to do it again. I can't. I knew that at one point, this is a 10-act play, and it's going to be over. And there's ways we could continue, and that bar's in storage, and I've thought about writing other things, and I might. This Kid Horace at the end.
Yeah.
That's I don't know if you know who that was, but that's Angus, not Angus. Angus T. Jones. He's the kid on 2.5 Men.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's the boy of 2.5 Men.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's he walked off of 2.5 Men, number one show on television for 12 years. Walked off of it because he felt it moral conflict with the show because he's a Christian. Mm-hmm. And I found that really fascinating, that somebody that walks away from a huge job because he doesn't feel right about it. And that made me think about Horace in my show, this kid who, and his son who doesn't speak to him, who judges him so much that he won't speak to him.
Right.
Thinks he's such a terrible man that he's not worth his fucking time, his own father.
Yeah.
Just like I am with my dad.
Right.
That's who I am. And I thought about that, and I talked to Angus on the phone, and I said, I want you to play a scene. You have 3 lines. He's in Colorado. I'm like, I want you to fly in and play this one scene.
Does he act anymore?
Not much. Not really. And I said, I want you to play a guy in a world that's very amoral, but you're not. In your mind, you're moral.
Yeah.
And we talked about the idea that when you make yourself moral, you separate yourself from other people, because most people aren't. So you isolate yourself. And he came and he played that part. So there's ways forward with it, and I don't know if I'm going to take them. I may leave it at where it is. But one thing I know for sure is that I'll do something like this again.
Right. That's it. Well, that's the important thing.
Yeah, I will do something just like this again. For sure.
You've outdone yourself, and you've taken yourself personally and creatively to this other level, and you've discovered amazing truths.
And the only thing that matters to me is that I can keep doing it, and all I need for that is for it to get close, at least, to being like it never happened financially.
Yeah.
And then I'll put it on somewhere like Netflix where a lot of people can see it and sample it. They won't have the experience that they had, the people
the
saw
secret people.
No one will ever see it the way they did until I do it again.
Yeah.
Which is this, but nobody will ever see Horace and Pete that way again. That you don't know how many you're going to see. You don't know what the next one's going to be. You don't know when you might see the next one.
Right.
I mean, for the first few weeks, nobody knew it was going to be every Saturday. I didn't promise that.
Yeah.
That'll never happen again. Or that something like this would never exist and then it did. That, no matter what I do, I'll never get that back again. I'll never get the thing back of posting it on my website and sitting and watching Twitter.
Yeah.
And then sending out the email and seeing Twitter, somebody writes,
What the fuck?
What the fuck is this? Did anybody get this email? What the fuck is this? And I'm like, it's 68 minutes, so they haven't watched it yet. 20 minutes in, people are like, I saw the whole thing. It's great. They couldn't have. They couldn't have. They were just that eager to say something. But just to watch the world take it in, and it was such a fucking wonderful thing. It was worth all of it. So I'll do it again. I don't need to make money on this. I don't need to. You know, I like a lot of people to see it.
Yeah. LouisCK.net.
LouisCK.net. It's $31. You can just watch the whole season.
Just fucking, like, I don't get $31. That's a week of coffee.
Yeah,
I don't understand how people prioritize things. They can't, you know what I mean? Like,
people want to feel like it's fair. This is why. And I understand it now because I've studied this.
Yeah. It's
not that they feel like that's too much money. I can't afford it.
Yeah.
It's that they don't want to be ripped off and they want to feel like it's on equity and the thing that they didn't think through, which why would they? Is that I'm on the head of the stream of this thing. I'm like in the mountains of the stream. And most shows make their first round of revenue on ads.
Yeah.
And then by the time they get to Netflix, they've made some profit already.
Yeah.
But I don't have that. This was the first. The people watching it, they're the first run people.
Right.
And that had value to some people. and they watched it. Anybody who didn't have value to, I didn't care to convince them or to advertise to them or promote to them. I could have easily.
Yeah.
But I thought it's better to let it grow exactly the size of people that it really needs.
Right, and also that just by nature of it, fundamentally it's not for everybody.
No, it sure isn't. It would have been a real mistake to get out in front of this show and say, this is going to be great, it's going to be funny, and to have billboards and shit like that. And especially because I was coming from a place, this is a weird part of it. I had a show on for 5 seasons. It was nominated for Best Comedy Series the last 3.
Yeah.
We won a bunch of Emmys over the years. So I realized the success of my show is going to hurt the next thing I do. It's going to hurt it. It can't help it. It's going to bring too many eyeballs and expectations to it. And especially once I realized what this thing was.
Well, but
I thought if I bury it deep in a fucking mountain and it has like a little beep beep signal, like only the people will come to it who are likely to like it.
But also, you created the space to allow yourself to grow creatively. You did what an artist does. Because this business is built on people repeating themselves.
Yeah.
Even your show.
Very good point. Yeah.
Structurally,
yes.
It became not predictable, but it's like there was a stylistic predictability to it.
Yep.
And that's what made it, what made people kind of like, oh yeah, it's Louis.
That's right. That's right.
So in order to disengage from that, you had to disengage from it.
That's right. I had to completely.
Right.
And then start from somewhere so far away from the center and just quietly drop it. Not even ask people to watch it. Just tell them it exists.
Well,
then I'm not asking for nothing. I'm just making it, and you guys come if you want.
Well, you're the real fucking deal, Lou.
I love you, Mark.
I love you too. You did a great thing, buddy. And there's not many real artists around, and Jesus Christ, buddy.
There's a bunch. There's a bunch of them, and nobody's paying attention.
No, but just I don't want to discredit anyone's art, and I know there's a lot of real artists, but to be at the stature you're at, and to afford yourself and take the risk to find the freedom to take a tremendous risk on so many levels, and really insulate yourself long enough and thoroughly enough to do it and execute it. Not everybody does that.
Well, it's a short life, and if you keep repeating your success, you're living shorter time. Like, in other words, you're going to end up looking back at your life in sections.
Right.
And so, not in years.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like the years I did Louis.
Yeah.
And that's one.
Yeah.
That's a one thing.
Right.
Then there's the Horace and Pete. That's one thing.
Yeah.
If I did Louis for 15 years, that means I got less. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
I wanted to do more. I wanted to make more. I want to do a bunch of shows before I die. I'm 48, and most people make it to, 80 if they're good. So I ain't got that many left,
I know. Me neither. I'm having a hard time knowing what to do with my mornings.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's an interesting and it's a luxury problem in some ways, given our position.
It definitely is, and I don't know. I don't think but it's an earned luxury.
Sure,
because a lot of people that are coming up, they look at guys like you and guys like me, and they go, "Well, look what they got."
Yeah,
I mean, they don't have to worry because look what they got. Look at the opportunities they got.
Yeah, we worry all the time.
But how did we get to this place? We do have advantages.
Mm-hmm.
And the luxury of some choices.
Right.
But how did we get those? What did we do to pay into those? Were we born with that?
No.
We fucking slogged it with no hope of reaching this.
I know.
For each of us, about 25 to 30 years of just running in place and building skill.
And not knowing if anything was going to work out.
Not knowing if it was going to work out, and thinking, actually, the odds were very against.
Yeah.
And you and I both suffer from PTSD from our early careers that we're only now starting to reckon with. That's an investment, and that's a commitment. And it started a long time ago.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like every time I know anybody who's been doing this like 10 years, and they go, well, it's just not fair. I don't get opportunities. You just haven't hung in there long enough.
I know.
Why wouldn't it take years and 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 years
to be great?
To be to get to make TV for a living. What an insane payoff.
It should take that long.
It should take
There'd be less garbage.
That's right. That's right. A lot of people get it pretty quick. But you can tell they got it quick.
You can, and then you can see them go away, and then some of them come back. I always love those guys. The guys who get the big breaks, like Kevin Hart and Bill Burr, who got sent up the flagpole, didn't work out. Right. They went back to the grind, come out bigger than ever.
That's a real story. If you can get through that, if you can hit and die and then come back, you are something.
Yeah.
That's what Chris Rock did. Chris Rock did SNL.
Yeah.
That's the biggest break you could ask for at the time.
Yeah.
Fucking stunk.
Yeah.
On SNL.
Yeah.
During a time where SNL stunk.
Yeah.
And then he disappeared. And that was like, that's what happened to Chris Rock.
Yeah.
And then there was, I think you might have been with me when he came to Caroline's to headline for an hour. So we went, let's go watch Chris Rock do an hour.
Yeah.
And
like,
I mean, while
holy shit.
we're sitting around New York, like, why doesn't somebody give me something?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm funny. I got 20 funny
I want to
minutes.
do Letterman.
Yeah. And then we sat in the back and watched him do an hour. And at the end of the hour, everybody's on their feet.
Yeah.
And all the comedians are bent over with their heads in their hands going, what the fuck am I doing with my goddamn life?
Right.
God damn it, is that guy good? So, he but yes, the hitting and then dying.